again today. Government vows to protect lives with a bill to curb strikes as ambulance workers walk out today.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 11th of January. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading your news this morning, unions have attacked a new bill aimed at curbing the impact of strike action, calling it undemocratic. Introducing the legislation, the Business Secretary said he was duty-bound to protect the lives of British people.
It comes as 25,000 ambulance workers and call handlers walk out across England and Wales today. Longer waits for 999 and 111 calls are expected, and there will be fewer ambulances on the road.
The Foreign Secretary will meet with Northern Ireland's party leaders today to discuss the impact of the protocol. It follows a breakthrough in negotiations between Britain and the EU, which would give Brussels access to UK trade data.
Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans and Banshees of Inisherin won big at the Golden Globes last night. The awards ceremony returned to screens following a series of controversies last year, but also saw Austin Butler win Best Actor for his portrayal of Elvis.
Get in touch the usual way, via Twitter, via email. Have your say, gbviews@gbnews.uk, and let us know where you're watching from around the country or indeed around the world, because I've had people get in touch from Portugal, from Cyprus, from Australia, from New Zealand. We're multinational, international,
multi-platform,
multi-purposeful. Anyway, top story this morning. The Business Secretary, Grant Shapps, has introduced a new bill that would require a minimum level of service for the public sector during any strikes.
Unions have reacted with fury, threatening legal action against the government if the bill's passed, and described the legislation as undemocratic.
Now, this comes as thousands of ambulance staff will walk out today for 24 hours over their ongoing dispute over pay. Well, that's not strictly true. It's not just pay. It's about supporting the whole infrastructure, the conditions, support for ambulances, how it's resourced and whatever. But anyway, our West Midlands reporter Will Hollis has the story.
It's a sound that will comfort some and concern others. But today, no matter the feeling, fewer sirens will be heard on the road. For the second time in less than a month, thousands of ambulance workers in Wales and England are on strike. Despite crisis talks between the Department for Health and union leaders at Unison and GMB on Monday, the walkout couldn't be stopped. At the heart of the dispute, pay. While visiting a hospital in London yesterday, the Health Secretary spoke of how it wouldn't be appropriate to return to last year's pay review, but didn't rule out backdating pay in the next.
The key focus of the meeting was to look at next year's pay review body and the evidence that we submit to that. We want to work constructively with the unions in terms of the evidence that is submitted there. But of course, as part of that meeting, we also listened to the trade unions in terms of their concerns.
Only the most serious of emergencies, including cardiac arrests, will be responded to today. Individual ambulance trusts have agreed a basic level of service with unions. But the government has criticised leaders for not setting a national standard. Now new legislation has been introduced in Parliament by the Business Secretary aimed at securing a minimum level of safety.
A lack of timely cooperation from the ambulance unions meant employers could not reach agreement nationally for minimum safety levels during recent strikes, and health officials were left guessing at the likely minimum coverage, making contingency planning almost impossible and putting everyone's constituents' lives at risk.
In a response, Unison's General Secretary Christina McAneer said, "Ministers should be putting all of their energies into solving the NHS dispute, not worsening relations with health workers. Unions want to work with the government to secure a pay deal, but attacking workers makes that much harder. Despite the industrial action, health bosses are encouraging you to call 999 for serious emergencies."
If you have a life-threatening illness, you must ring 999. Your call will be answered by an experienced call handler. They will assess you, and if you need an emergency ambulance, you will receive an emergency ambulance.
With little hope of a deal to end the action now, more ambulance strikes are planned for within the fortnight. Will Hollis for GB News.
OK, let's get reaction to this story. The deputy political editor of HuffPost UK, that's Sophia Slade, joins us now. Sophia, will legislation stop strikes, do you think?
I actually think, quite simply, the legislation that's presented this week, yesterday by Grant Shapps, no, I don't think it's going to stop the current wave of strikes that we're experiencing. Just from a practical perspective, it's not going to get through Parliament anytime soon. I think it's going to face opposition in the Commons. I think when it gets to the Lords, they're going to want to sort of, rewrite it. They're not going to like it at all. So I think on a practical level, this legislation, although it might sound good, it's certainly not going to, happen anytime soon and help the current wave of strikes that we're experiencing.
That being said, will it be popular, do you think, with the public who, as we know, very concerned about the ambulance strikes today, being told, actually, if they need an ambulance, to call 111 unless it's a life and death situation? Anyone who's called 111 recently will be aware you can't get through to anyone. So there'll be a lot of very concerned people about ambulance strikes today and about all the ongoing strikes across the board.
Yeah, I think from that perspective, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? The idea of having minimum service levels, and the government's argument is basically, other European countries do this. We just want to, we're not stopping strikes. This is their argument. But, we're just trying to ensure that there's a certain safety level, that, crucial services, these kind of blue light services, do have a minimum level so that you can get, sort of certain category care.
But here's the dilemma for, let's take the ambulance workers as the best example of all of this as well. Yes, it's about pay. Yes, it's about recognition. It's about resources for their operation. They believe that what they do just isn't supported. They haven't got an infrastructure to make things happen. They say the public are at risk anyway because of this. The reason we have to wait hours and hours for an ambulance, and believe me, with a broken shoulder this year, I had to wait 4 hours at the bottom of the stairs bleeding for one. Delighted when they came. But how do they get their case? How do they make people say, look at us, look at what's going on, resource us properly if they don't strike?
I think that is the difficult dilemma, isn't it? I think at the moment public opinion is probably on their side, public sympathy. But I think maybe if we come back at the end of today or tomorrow and see what stories have come out, what's on tomorrow's front pages, what is the impact on patient safety? How long are some people going to have to wait for an ambulance today? I live near a major trauma hospital and there's always ambulances queuing up outside. My local service is the London Ambulance Service. They're slashed to half the number of usual ambulances they have. 200 ambulances today for the LAS for a population of 9-10 million. From my perspective, I'm assuming that is going to have an impact on patient safety. And I think the health bosses recognise that. They are worried.
If you were to pick one country that you associate with striking, would it be France?
Probably.
Yes, and France has this legislation in place. It's not going to curtail the ability to strike. It's just going to ensure that the disruption caused doesn't create life-threatening situations. Well,
it will curtail the ability to strike in the UK because you could end up in prison.
You could still
lose your
strike,
job.
but it has to have a minimum level of safety and service, which is the same as in France.
But you could be prosecuted for it here.
If it's not safe. But, you'll still have your sector, you'll still be able to, as a sector, go on strike, but you have to be able to provide a skeleton service, which, patients using the NHS, they've got their loved ones in hospital. They want to know that nurses, although they may have a justified cause, will have colleagues that are on the picket line and those providing a basic level of safety.
Well, then why strike? If they're going to have to provide the same service anyway, this is what the conundrum with all of this.
It's a skeleton service.
You may be affected by this. You're listening or watching us this morning. Get in touch with us and tell us, do you have any sympathy with the ambulance workers and what they're doing? And if they don't strike, how do they get the case across that they're not being resourced properly? They're just trying to draw this out and say, look, you haven't got a proper ambulance service, and this is how we're drawing attention to this, because it is not being resourced properly.
Yeah, I think there's sort of an element where I kind of wonder with this, is it the right solution for the wrong problem? It's not going to solve what we're going through right now, kind of thing. We need to, get in the room with unions. And I think it's kind of, I'm a bit confused about the messages coming from government. Monday it was, come in unions, let's talk, let's hash it out, let's sort things out. Tuesday it's, they've sparked a row with unions. And whatever you think about the legislation, it has sparked huge wave of anger from unions. And ironically, they're now talking about sort of, clubbing together for a day of action, I think the 1st of February, which to me doesn't sound like a million miles away from a general strike.
OK, Sophia, thank you very much indeed. Sophia is the Deputy Political Editor at HuffPost UK. Thank you very much for your take on things. Well, if you think things are bad in the health service in mainland Britain. You should be in Northern Ireland, where we haven't even got a government to implement things there. The Foreign Secretary today will meet Northern Ireland party leaders in Belfast to discuss the effect of the Northern Irish Protocol.
Yeah, he'll be accompanied by Chris Heaton-Harris, the Northern Ireland Secretary of State, where they will also meet with businesses.
Well, let's now go to the broadcaster and journalist, the political commentator on all of this. We say good morning to Mr. Eamonn Malley. Eamonn.
Good morning, Eamonn. Thank you for having me on air. Not
at all. What about, is this breakthrough all it's being billed as?
Well, I think it's a building brick. I wouldn't overestimate it. I think we have a long way to go. The bottom line is this, that Europe and Britain have now agreed to share trade data. Now, that is a significant development, but it's not a solution. And I notice that we're not seeing so much talk about unilateralism now at Westminster. The Liz Truss protocol bill was aimed at a unilateral act by Britain to challenge the European position. Now it appears that both sides are very, very keen to resolve this outstanding problem together. And I think that is good news. But Jeffrey Donaldson, the leader of the Democratic Unionist Party, yet again said last night, unless the protocol is removed, he will not be coming and will not re-enter Parliament or government here in Northern Ireland. So his position seems to be very absolute. I suspect that the British government and the European administration will engage in some, or using some of the mechanisms used during the making of the Good Friday Agreement, constructive ambiguity. A bit of a fudge here and a bit of a fudge there. There can be no absolute answer to this resolution. But I do think that the protocol will obtain in no matter what happens at the end of the day.
Yeah, and we continue without a government there, putting our health service to rights and whatever. The whole idea of the Northern Irish Protocol. Eamonn, let me just say, although you talked about constructive ambiguity there and you were trying to make things crystal clear, let me just say, my friend, nobody understands what you're talking about, what I'm talking about, right, what on earth a protocol is. Who does it benefit? Who does it not? Basically, what is the problem?
Well, when I talk about constructive ambiguity, it's an old trick used by Henry Kissinger way back all those years, where you almost tell one side this and tell the other side something else. It's fudging, and it happens all the time in negotiations at this level. The Good Friday Agreement, when David Trimble was in serious trouble, rebellion within his party, suddenly he got a letter of confidence from Tony Blair on the whole question of decommissioning and action going to be taken. Should the Ulster Unionists find themselves in government 6 months in with Sinn Féin and the IRA had done nothing about their guns. And then he organised for the President of the United States to ring Trimble. So all these games are played. But if Jeffrey Donaldson is so adamant that the so-called political integrity and economic integrity of Northern Ireland are not observed, there will be no return to government. In other words, Jeffrey Donaldson saying, if Northern Ireland doesn't feel, unionism doesn't feel it's as British as Finchley, then he says he will not be forming a government. So basically that, and the protocol was put in place, this measure was put in place to as an alternative to a hard border, which was deemed a source of awful trouble in Northern Ireland.
But just to clarify to people, at the end of the day, Donaldson's stance on this or whatever is that this could be the slippery slope to United Ireland. This could be the back door to United Ireland. Sorry for interrupting.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Well, Eamonn, I just wanted to talk about what's changed this week, because everybody seems to be getting very excited, so much so that, we've got James Cleverly and we've got James Heaton-Harris going over as well. We've got potentially Keir Starmer later in the week. And this is after, on Monday, negotiations really seem to ramp up. And this is all about Brussels getting access to the UK's online data sharing system so that they can see live information on goods moving across from Britain into Northern Ireland. And there's a particular focus on potatoes. I just want to explain why this is significant and what's new as of this week.
Well, first of all, it was sausages, and now it's potatoes. I don't know what it will be next week. But the bottom line is that there will be controls of some manifestation in terms of products coming in to Northern Ireland The danger being that they're going to end up in Southern Ireland, which is part of the EU. And that's what this is all about, guarding against products which are not adhering the European standard when it comes to whatever it might be. So that is what this is all about. And Europe has a set of standards when it comes to their food, and they want a consistent standard of products entering Europe. Now, the European Court of Justice comes into play here. It governs all trade within the Union. It governs all countries within the European Union. If you take Norway, for example, Norway has a special economic relationship with Europe. But Norway is subject to the European Court of Justice. And I suspect that Rishi Sunak realises that this has to happen, that no matter what happens, what changes take place, trade with Europe will be subject to the European Court of Justice. The European Court of Justice, it governs all of the European Union when it comes to trade.
Well, 19th of January is the date by which ministers must call fresh elections for the Stormont Assembly, but lots of suspicion that date will come and go and there will be no change. But look, lots of fingers crossed on the protocol. Eamonn, good to get your thoughts this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Good. The time is 60 minutes past 6 o'clock. We're going to bring you up to date with what's happening news-wise.
A counter-terrorism investigation is underway after a package arriving at Heathrow Airport was found to have traces of uranium. Scotland Yard says Border Force detected the substance in a routine screening of the item at the end of last month. The force has said the amount of contaminated material was extremely small and poses no threat to the public.
Teachers in Scotland are walking out for a second day today after last-ditch talks failed to find a solution. The Scottish Teaching Union, SNCT, demanded a 10% pay increase, but the Scottish Government offered only 5%.
More than 270,000 people were homeless in England on any given night last year. That's according to the charity Shelter, which estimates 45% of those were children. The organisation says it's bracing for a further spike in homelessness this year.
Now, that is something I have never heard before, that 45% of homeless people could be children.
Yeah, don't forget children are classified as under 18, so I'm assuming there's a lot of those who'd be sort of 17, 16, people who are old enough to leave home, but that's not making it OK. Still truly shocking. Yeah. Is this something that you've noticed where you live, an increase in the numbers of people on the streets?
Well, when I simply came into work this morning, I noticed how cold it was outside. It really was freezing, and you think this is absolutely just incredible. And this is where you come with, you look at budgets and how budgets are applied, and you come back to this foreign aid budget. So we've got that amount of people, and 45% of them are children, sleeping on the streets, absolutely homeless, and we sent money abroad for all sorts of weird and wonderful things. Your views very welcome.
Also, today, we're asking for you to get in touch on something we'll be talking about a little bit later on in the programme. It's called the ick. OK, this is when you're dating someone in the early stages, you're really into them, and suddenly they do something that really is a deal breaker. After that, you can't see past it.
So does this only apply to dating, or can this just be observations?
No, it's early stages of dating, means you call the plug. It's not like when you're in a long marriage and you're just getting fed up with things. I
used to work with a guy who sat opposite me at his desk. Better not identify too much, but he sat opposite me.
Please do.
But the smell of body odour from him was
that's
awful.
The ick.
It was like, it really was sickening, right? And obviously the guy had a condition, but did you not, should you say, excuse me, you smell? Should you?
What, in an early stage? I'm pretty sure that's a relationship killer. You know,
but this is a working colleague.
Oh, right, fine, yeah. But I'm
do you know what we used to do? We used to get, at the window, we used to get plastic cups and put them there and put these sort of like toilet air fresheners into them.
To make it obvious what you thought.
No, well, just try and change the mood.
The smell. Well, there's been a poll of 2,000 adults. Smelling bad comes up top.
Does it?
So you're spot on there,
yeah.
Absolutely spot on there. Being rude to waiters, the waiter test is an absolute classic. You can tell if someone's a decent person or not if they are rude to waiters. Not interested.
Who snap their fingers and whatever at waiters.
For me, it's bad spelling in text messages. Don't do cause or you're spelt wrong. Game changer.
Crudity. crudity.
Toilet humour.
I have nothing against swearing, absolutely nothing. I quite like swearing, no problem with that. And there's certain particularly really good words.
Which you've taught my mother, shockingly, my church-going mother.
There's some good words. But what I don't like is crudity.
No,
I don't
vulgarity.
Like vulgarity. I don't like lavatorial things.
Yeah.
I don't like people who talk about bodily functions. And I don't.
Well,
and I've warned you before about it.
Apparently being too clingy, talking in a baby voice, dirty fingernails, they're the worst offenders. We want to know what your relationship icks are.
Talking in a baby voice?
Yeah, okay. Oh, sweetie, you're so cute. I love you so much. You're so fluffy. Oh, I love you. Blech. Awful.
I talk to my dog like that.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
Is that OK?
Yeah. Someone this morning suggested anybody that has an Instagram account for their pet, weird.
Is that
deal
weird?
breaker.
I don't agree with that. I think that's quite good. Do you think that's a deal breaker? I don't have an Instagram account for pet.
Maggie, but now you're thinking about it, it'd be a good idea.
No, I just, funny enough, I signed up to another dog charity this week.
I know, you're trying to give me a new dog.
Yeah, I was trying to give a dog a home. But I do think when I look through my healing process over the past few months...
Maggie's got to be key.
Oh, my goodness me, the love that a dog gives you is absolutely incredible. Will we take a break?
Yeah, let's take a break and get those icks into us, and we'll bring you some of those a little bit later on. Also, talking about the Golden Globes. Don't go anywhere. Here's your forecast.
Good morning. A blustery, boisterous Wednesday out there. Gusty winds, especially across the far north of Scotland at the moment, bringing a slightly cooler feel and bringing plenty of showers, but there'll be some sunshine as well. These weather fronts brought the gloomy weather yesterday, but this low pressure is still near the far north of Scotland, and look at those tightly packed isobars, still very gusty at the moment over the Northern Isles, gusts of 65, maybe 70 or 75 miles an hour for the next few hours, so we do have a Met Office yellow warning in place here. Elsewhere, a blustery day. Yes, some good spells of sunshine over eastern areas this morning, but plenty of showers further west. And quite a wet spell of weather, just working from west to east across the country during the day. Some heavy bursts of rain that could cause some further issues. It's been so wet recently. Temperatures 7 to 10 degrees, so around average, but feeling cooler. Certainly a fresher feel compared to yesterday. Then we'll see further pulses of more persistent rain coming into Wales and southwest England during this evening. That crosses England and Wales overnight, something a little drier for Scotland and Northern Ireland. The winds easing as well, and with clearer spells we may see some pockets of frost here, but further south with cloud and rain and still pretty blustery. It will be another mild start on Thursday morning. Mild, but again wet, and with more rain to come for Wales and southwest England, we have another Met Office yellow warning in place through Wednesday night and Thursday, the potential for further flooding and disruption. Scotland may well have a largely dry Thursday morning, but a band of rain swings in here with some hill snow likely. Wet weather also pushing across England and Wales, so western areas turning a little brighter tomorrow afternoon, but still more showers and more strong winds to come in the northwest later on Thursday. So remaining very, very blustery. Further sunshine and showers on Friday and into the weekend. And during the weekend, it will also turn a little colder. Bye for now.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back at 6:25. Still to come on the programme this morning at 6:45, we've got the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay. Really delighted to be welcoming on. I think it's the first time we've had him on the show, actually. Talking to him about the government's legislation to try and curb strikes, as well as today's ambulance strikes. They're all walking out.
And if you're looking for a new job in January, at 7:45 this morning, we'll be giving tips on sprucing up your CV and how to get the best out of interviews.
And keep your icks coming in. We want to know what it is that really gets on your nerves when you're dating in the early days. GB Views at gbnews.uk or tweet us at GB News.
Well, overnight there was a big awards ceremony called the Golden Globes, and it was held in Los Angeles. And kicking off the award season ahead of the Oscars, they come in March.
Yes, and our showbiz reporter Ellie Phillips has been up all night and amazingly looks fantastic on it.
A lot of makeup.
And you are here with all the details. So the big winners, I mean, we've got a clip of the Banshees of Inisherin, and they did really well.
Yeah, so the Banshees of Inisherin and there's another film as well.
Fabelmans.
Those two did so well last night. The Banshees of Inisherin is actually, it was up for 8 awards. It went away with 2, but 2 big awards. So it won Best Film, and it also won, Colin Farrell was named Best Actor for that as well.
Let's take a look.
That you never forget.
Something to you. Just tell me what I've done to you. I just don't like you no more.
Have you been rowing?
Have you been rowing?
Have we been rowing? Well, you are rowing.
It does look like we're rowing.
You can't just stop being friends with a fella.
He's dull, Siobhan.
But he's always been dull.
Maybe this whole thing has just been about getting you to stand up for yourself.
How are you, fatty? Dancing with your dog, is it? What did you come here for? I just came to kick your door in and give you a slagging.
So the Banshees of Inisherin is something we're going to see a lot more of in the run-up to the Oscars there. So well done, Colin Farrell. But since it's a sort of duet with Brendan Gleeson, bit rough on him. Not
reincarnation of In Bruges as well, seeing them together.
And he is really, really good in it as well. So it's a bit of a weird one. It's set in 1920s Ireland, on an island, off Ireland. And it's basically about these 2 friends who... their relationship goes through a bit of turbulence, and it's how they deal with it and the fallout. And I guess the moral, in a way, is kind of what's more important, how you live your life now, how much you enjoy it, or the legacy you leave behind afterwards. That's kind of the pivotal question in it. It's a bit odd, but there are some really cute donkeys in there. And the acting is really good. And I think it is one of those Oscar films. As we know, the Golden Globes leads up to the Oscars. That's what everyone wants. And I think it's definitely putting, especially... Colin Farrell up in that kind of category area.
And did you say he won Best Actor?
He won Best Actor.
Oh, I thought it was Austin Butler for Elvis.
Oh, so the way it works in the Golden Globes is there's a lot of Best Actor categories.
Okay.
So you've got comedy, you've got drama, and so he won for comedy, because technically it's a comedy, and Austin Butler won for Best Drama.
Right, OK, so that was in Elvis, which was absolutely a phenomenal movie.
Amazing. And then when he got up to accept his speech, Austin Butler, I think, was always... he was going to win. It was a given that he was going to win it. He got up, he thanked everyone for all their support and help. And he actually told Steve, he actually, when he was up on stage, said that he'd printed out scripts when he was 12 years old to learn them.
Really?
And you can just tell how much it meant to him, how incredible he is. He took his sister as his date, which is a bit interesting because he's in a high-profile relationship. But yeah, it was really interesting to see. And he was unbelievable in it, and he sang all the songs in it. He represented it really well. The only downside was everyone was like hoping he would bring a bit of joy to his acceptance speech and be like, thank you, good night. And he didn't.
Oh,
we were like, you missed it, you missed it.
I'm sitting next to the best Elvis impersonator I've ever met.
No.
Have you seen the film Elvis, and what did you think of his performance? Because you really are very good at an Elvis impersonation.
I haven't gone to see it because it was directed by Baz Luhrmann, and I thought it was going to be some big Ponzi musical thing like Moulin Rouge.
Yeah.
And I thought, don't desecrate Elvis like this for me. So I haven't gone to see
Oh.
it. But everybody says it's very good, but then I think that might come from a lot of people who don't really know Elvis or know what he is. But
Possibly, but I would say it is a really, really good watch. He's incredible in it. He really embodies everything that it's about. And I think I'm someone, when I watch a film, as much as I do entertainment news, I'm like a normal watcher.
Yes.
I'm not someone who wants something to be 4 hours long and winding on.
Right.
No, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And I would recommend it.
Ellie, the film that I really want to see is Tar, and this is about a philharmonic orchestra, and Cate Blanchett won Best Actress for it.
She wasn't there to collect it.
Shame.
Yeah, which was a real shame. There were a few people that weren't there to collect awards on the night, and it was very much made aware to audiences that the exact reason why they weren't there, because there was a lot of controversy coming into these awards and people were saying who will actually turn up. There were no video acceptances. It was accepted by the presenters who presented the award. Cate Blanchett won. I think, again, it was not a surprise that she won. I think she was definitely going to nail that one.
I stood in a hotel foyer in Las Vegas beside this very weird and pale woman who was surrounded by people. She literally had people around her to stop people bumping into her. So we were standing there queuing up to check in or check out or whatever it is. And as it turned out, so I said to Ruth, I said, look who that is, that's Cate Blanchett. And it was Cate Blanchett, no doubt.
Wow.
So we then we had breakfast in a hotel, and Ruth said, look who that is, it's Sylvester Stallone. And I said, it couldn't be Sylvester Stallone. It was Sylvester Stallone.
No. God, what hotel was this?
Yeah, and they were sitting saying, look, there's Eamonn Holmes.
Yeah. They thought it was George Clooney, right?
Incredible.
You were like, no selfies, please, no selfies.
The Fabelmans, Steven Spielberg, this was Best Film.
Yeah, so this was Best Film in a drama category, and he also took home Best Director for this as well. And The Fabelmans is essentially kind of semi-autobiographical. He's taken his life and put it into a film. And he said on the night when he accepted the award that it took him this long, he's in his 70s now, to be brave enough to do a film about himself and about his life.
Let's take a look at a proper clip of that.
That you never forget.
Sammy?
The lights change how everything looks. It's hard to find our house.
Ours is the dark house with no lights.
In this family, it's the scientists versus the artists. Sammy's on my team, takes after me.
Interesting. You know, Michelle Williams, big win for me. I really, really rate her.
Yeah.
She's fantastic. She's been in a lot of Oscar-winning movies as well over the years.
Yeah, really long career as well. She's done really well. Hope to see her do well out of all of them.
So for Steven Spielberg, I suppose probably quite an emotional night, because last night he also got a big tribute, didn't he, from the child star of Indiana Jones, who's now gone on as an adult to win Best Supporting Actor, and this is in the film Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes, so the actor's name is Ke Huy Quan. He won, like you said, this Best Supporting Actor award. It was one of the early awards in the night, and he got up on stage and was so excited about it all, and then shocked everyone because he thanked Steven Spielberg for giving him a chance 30 years ago in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom as a child actor, and he said he remembered that, and if it wasn't for that, it wouldn't have given him, led him on the path that he's been led on today.
Let's have a look at that.
Thank you so much. I was raised
to never forget where I came from, and to always remember who gave me my first opportunity. I am so happy to see Steven Spielberg here tonight. Steven, thank you.
Oh, do you know? Have you seen this film yet? Everything Everywhere.
No, I've seen the Temple of Doom, but
yeah, it's good. Everything Everywhere All at Once is a weird watch. I watched it once, and I think I'm gonna have to watch it again because it's one of those where you're like, what happened? Who are they making films for nowadays? But it's got a solid cast.
Well, you see, this is why I adore cinema, and I go off it because I'm fed up being lectured, giving a really grunge story about some misery. I can tell you exactly what it's all about now. The wokery just goes through everything. However, yesterday there was buses all over London advertising something with Gerard Butler in it. What was it called?
Oh yeah, we were in the car together,
something.
and you were like, "Oh, you want to go and see that?" I said, "No, thanks."
No. I said, "See, that could be a nick." See, if I was going to the cinema with
and
you...
I said I didn't want to go to a violent film.
She's a bit
You'd be like,
weird.
she's boring.
And you'd want to go and see some of these misery, wokery...
No, I like love stories. I bring back Richard Curtis. Where are the happy love stories?
Yeah.
That's what I'm about.
Yeah, the ones that
They're remaking The Holiday, aren't
I
they?
need to remake it. I'll watch that one all day long, over and over.
Yeah, that's a nice one. I think these are the ones that have done really well in this one have been the ones that are a little bit odd, a little bit unusual.
I haven't got time for odd.
Yeah,
I'm exhausted.
Yeah, honestly, everything, everywhere, all at once. You need to watch it when you're in the right headspace. Put it that way.
Lovely, lovely. Ellie, great talking to you. Thanks for putting us in the picture. With the Golden Globes. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to take the break. After that, we're going to be going through the newspapers. David Miller, Scarlett Maguire, bringing those to you after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Okay, yeah, the time is 22 minutes before 7 o'clock on this Wednesday morning.
Let's bring you up to date with our front pages of the newspapers this morning. Here's the Express, focusing on the impending nursing strike, appealing to Rishi Sunak to do a deal for Britain.
Metro goes with a strikes as Grant Shapps announced new laws that could sack ambulance, fire and rail staff who walk out.
Here's the Sun leading with a nuclear package being found at Heathrow Airport. Investigators are continuing to search for those involved in the incident.
The Mirror reports that Boris Johnson is living in a £20 million home for free, calling the ex-PM shameless. I'd like to see what that's a pretty big home, isn't it? 20 million. There's Elvis. You thought that was me in the front. No. Homage to Elvis, not the Golden Globes winner Austin Butler, but a bus driver who swapped his day job to become a professional Elvis impersonator.
I tell you what, with all the news stories there are in the world to report on, the Daily Star, they have a gift for finding something completely irrelevant.
Well, I'm telling you something.
Yeah.
I remember many years ago going to see an Elvis tribute act and how everybody in the audience, women in particular, would throw their underwear and all sorts of things at him. And this guy, David, was living the dream by being Elvis, right? And then many, many years later for BBC's Children in Need, I did a spot where I was Elvis. And I walked around in my Elvis outfit and the glasses and things, and people talked to me. There was a singer, an American singer called Macy Gray, and she just talked to me as Elvis. Well, Elvis, what's happened here? Whatever. People give you the position.
Have you left the building?
So people want to touch you, Scarlett. People want to do, you know. So to be an Elvis impersonator as a job, I could think of worse things.
So did you have the underwear thrown at you?
So the rest of your career has been a decline from that, hasn't it?
Look, let's introduce them properly. David Mellor, Scarlett Maguire in the studio with us, ready to take us through the papers. And David, I thought we'd finish talking about Prince Harry, but you want to. He's on the front, as you probably would expect, of a lot of the papers again today. You've chosen the Mail, Online.
Well, I've chosen several of them, but it's not that I want to, but he's there.
Yeah.
And I hope this will be the end of it. So I thought a selection of things. The Times, which Valentine Lowe, good reporter, just says how this wretched thing has been selling out all over. And then there's the Mail Online, which has Harry joining in the mockery of the monarchy on some satirical, in inverted commas, American television show. And also I wanted to draw attention to Philip Johnson's opinion piece, where he reminds us that this isn't, that his father's coronation could be the most grotesque event of its kind since the coronation of King George IV, where Queen Caroline tried to get in and they shut the door in her face. So there are precedents for this. But, I mean, this is a farce. This is dragging the country through the muck. And at a certain point, presumably when Harry has finished his contractual obligations, made his money, he might decently retire, leaving, of course, a lot of the papers to also speculate on this. What are they going to do about him?
But the first thing is the coronation. Is he going to get an invite?
Oh, yes. I think he will. Look, I don't know that he should, but the interesting thing is, how brazen is he and his wife? Will they insist on coming? I think it'd be very brazen.
Well, I mean, they turned up at the funeral of Her Majesty the Queen after the Oprah interview, just ahead of the Netflix series. I don't think
there'll be another documentary in it, and at least 2 books if they accept invitations to that.
Anyway, at a certain point, because I come on to this a bit later on of Charles's activities, he's going to have to man up and deal with Harry.
Man up.
And I think the country is ready for Harry to be dealt with. But I may be wrong.
Well, I just think every time we go on about Harry, we sell more books. I mean, this, as David said, this book, it sold more than any other.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I'll tell you why. We all know the way this business works. You can buy your own books in advance. They can buy them.
So you think Harry's bought his books?
I think they could buy 100,000 books and manipulate and massage the sales figures.
OK, we can say that. But actually, there are a lot of people reading this book. I mean, I think the reviews I've read by people without access to Grind is this is a tragic, sad story. And the best thing we could do is ignore them. I mean, long before this happened, right, the Mail was doing 4 stories a day on Harry and Meghan. I mean, they'd have pictures of Harry driving a car, for God's sake. I mean, when is this going to stop? And it is our obsession with this person who is sad, angry, comes from a dysfunctional family. My God, it's awful.
All right, let's stop it.
Actually, I agree with that.
Listen, the ambulance strikes today, and the NHS situation with nurses and whatever. Terrible dilemma with this ambulance strike, Scarlett, because I mean, these folk are trying to draw attention as well. It's not just about pay. They're saying their whole ambulance service is under-resourced. What else do they do if they don't strike? Yet if they do strike, they are putting lives at risk, which brings us back to the legislation that Grant Shapps was trying to introduce yesterday.
Yes, but I mean, the key thing about Grant Shapps' legislation is its minimum levels of service. Well, I wish we had them. I mean, you know, you say it's really difficult during a strike, you have to ring 111. Well, a friend of mine, multiple sclerosis, falls out of bed, she's in her 70s, and 999 says, no, you have to ring 111. So she has to wait the hour and a half. And then they go, yes, you can have an ambulance. I mean, this is... And this was not on a strike day. I mean, that's what we have to realise, is that actually... Most people won't even notice there's an ambulance strike.
This is one of the reasons they are striking.
Yes, of course, it's not just about pay. I mean, and it's the same with the nurses. It's... and frankly, to an extent, the train drivers, but... the train operators, that actually it's about conditions. It's also because they feel that there's no respect. I mean, these things should have been dealt with last year. We should not be having strikes now.
Well, David, we've got the Health Secretary on in a matter of minutes, and, you know, I do think it's interesting that a right-leaning paper like The Express is saying the clock's ticking, Rishi, do a deal for Britain. Rumours in the papers this morning that it is very much Rishi Sunak who is holding things up, that the Health Secretary is ready to do a deal. What's your reading of the situation and your message to the Health Secretary ahead of our interview with him in a minute?
Well, a huge amount of extra money has been poured into the health service, and yet the health service is described as being a bigger shambles than it's ever been. This is not acceptable. I mean, how much public money is going to be thrown into the health service and how little is going to come out? Because obviously the whole of the debate about health is determined by inputs and never by outputs. And that was the same when I was when I was health minister. So I think what they have to do is to try to differentiate between dealing with the health unions on the basis that most people would want to see that, whilst not giving a window for the railway workers and people like that, who I think most people do not have a lot of time for. And in fact, the interesting thing
you don't have a lot of time for until your train comes off the tracks. I mean, people who walk up and down tracks, they walk the line literally testing whether the rail is straight or not straight, and they're doing that at 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever. I think you should have a lot of time. I mean, Scarlett made a point there about not appreciating, not cultivating people not in their jobs. And I think that's a problem with, we just use this real workers, and we don't even have a clue what that involves.
Well, my grandfather was a railway worker, and my other grandfather was a railway worker summertime. So in fact, my grandfather lived in a railway-tied cottage for the whole of his life. So I am familiar with that. But one thing I do remember is that when he was a railway guard, three-piece suit, watch chain and all the rest of it, there was a pride in working on the railways that doesn't seem to exist at the moment.
OK. Scarlett, we talked about Boris Johnson's £20 million residence at the moment. So he's, he's shacked. Where's he shacked up?
Well, I was going to say, what you didn't mention about this wonderful house that he lives in is it's just around the corner from Harrods in Knightsbridge. And one of the reasons the Mirror's gone for it is that he says that it's worth £10,000 a month. And actually, the Mirror says that people living in houses like that, it's £30,000 a month. And this is the Bamfords, who have given nearly £10 million to the Conservative Party. And needless to say, we have a Lord Bamford, because that's what we get. But they basically paid for Boris's wedding. He has a cottage on their estate. I mean, God forbid that Boris Johnson pays anything out of his own pocket.
Well, I don't disagree with that either. We're here to disagree. Say something I disagree with.
I will try, David. I really will.
Let's talk, shall we, just quickly, because I hear the Health Secretary is almost ready to talk to us. But, Scarlett, there's an interesting story that broke overnight about a nuclear plot being intercepted at Heathrow Airport. Incredibly worrying. This was just a spot check. Imagine if they hadn't have done a spot check on that day.
Well, I know. I mean, this is the Iranian uranium problem, is that a package of uranium came on a commercial airline from Pakistan and was going to be sent to a Iranian address in Terribly. Now, actually, to be fair, uranium is not dangerous until there are things done it which makes it dirty. So it wasn't any danger to people, but it does show, I mean, that how important it is that we keep a serious eye on our borders.
All right.
OK. Big day in the Health Service today. We can go to the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, who joins us today. Secretary of State, good morning to you. We've got the ambulance strike today. What would you like to say about that?
Good morning. Well, obviously, we're working closely with trade union partners in terms of the contingency plans that are putting in place, but clearly there will be an impact today on patient responses, and that is very concerning. There's only so much that can be done through those contingency measures. We've provided in full the settlement that the independent pay review body have awarded. That came on top of 3% last year, which was at a time when the rest of the public sector were facing a pay freeze. But we've been having further discussions with the trade unions, but clearly it is disruptive to patients to have these strikes, and we're saying to people, if they do face genuine life-threatening issues, then of course the response is to phone 999, but if not, then to be very mindful of the pressure on the system today. Clearly there's 111, which is there for urgent calls, but we're just asking people to be mindful of the significant pressure our ambulance service will be under today.
Yes, but Secretary of State, people will die inevitably as a result of what's happening today, and people will blame you, will they not, for failing to avert these strikes, and people will say this is a stain on this government's reputation.
Well, the government has accepted in full the recommendations of the pay review body, and even the opposition say that the right approach is...
well know.
Well, that is why we had discussions on Monday with the unions in terms of this coming year's settlement. Of course, we're more than 3/4 of the way through this year, and I don't think it's right to go all the way back to last April, retrospectively to last year's pay, but we're open to discussing in terms of this year's pay review body that will want to take on board what has happened with inflation. We're keen to work with the trade unions in terms of our evidence to the pay review body. That's what we had constructive discussions with them on Monday about. It's what I'm meeting the Doctors' Union to discuss further today. So it's important in terms of this coming year's pay review body that we get that right, that we work constructively together on the evidence that goes in, and of course that will take on board what has happened over the last year.
But Health Secretary, this is not just about pay for these ambulance workers. The argument being put forward is that they're trying to draw attention to how under-resourced the ambulance service is. Now, you have to recognise that, because before this pay round or whatever, the waiting times for ambulances, just not acceptable, just absolutely ridiculous. Is that something you recognise? Is that something you will be addressing?
Yeah, we recognise that the pressure that we've seen, particularly in emergency departments, in our accident and emergency, hasn't been acceptable, and I made that clear in the House of Commons on Monday. That's in common with many other countries as well. If you look at what the First Minister said in Scotland, their hospitals are nearly completely full. If you look in Wales, severe pressure on the NHS, and more than 50,000 patients waiting more than 2 years for their operations. If you look in France, in Germany, their intensive care units are saturated. My counterpart, the French Minister, was saying, because there's been massive pressure on the system as a consequence of the pandemic. We've got more than 9,000 patients still in hospital with COVID, and then we had this massive surge going into Christmas, a 7-fold increase, sometimes as many people with flu compared to the previous month, and 100 times more patients in hospital with flu compared to this time last year. So you're right, there's been massive pressure on the system. That's why I announced on Monday a further £250 million to provide very quick support to get more people out of hospital into residential care, those people who are fit to be discharged from hospital, around 13,000 patients who don't need to be in hospital and can be discharged. That, of course, builds on the funding that we were already allocating. At the autumn statement, we prioritised social care, £7.5 billion over the next 2 years, on top of the £6.6 billion that is going into the NHS over the next 2 years. So we recognised in the autumn statement that this was going to be a very challenged winter because of the legacy of the pandemic. But what we saw in common with countries, whether in Scotland, Wales, but across Europe, was a massive surge in flu cases that has put enormous pressure onto A&Es, and that's what I set out with a range of measures on Monday we're doing on top of the extensive work that was set out in the summer.
Yeah, and you talk about the situation in other countries also being incredibly pressurised as well, and yet we hear that the UK has the highest excess death rate of any G7 country. Our nurses are paid worse than most other European countries, and here we are, a right-leaning paper this morning saying, come on, Rishi, do a deal for Britain, get this nurses negotiation done. Now, other papers are reporting that you're quite willing to do that, you're quite up for it, but it's Number 10 that's blocking it. What's going on? Are we going to have these backdated payments for nurses or not?
Well, we were discussing with the unions how we make any settlements more affordable, particularly focusing on the coming year's pay review body. But of course, I listened to the representations from the trade unions in terms of the cost of living pressures that they face here and now. But the independent pay review body looks at what is affordable across the piece. What we're keen to explore and have been exploring is where there's opportunities to go further through productivity, through efficiency, looking, for example, at the significant agency costs, looking where technology
offensive to nurses working 18-hour shifts, as you say, inspecting patients or looking after patients in waiting rooms in awful conditions, going home and crying because they cannot give the care that they have been able to give up until now throughout their career. To ask them to make efficiency savings or better productivity when all they're saying is, hang on a minute, I cannot afford to eat properly at the moment. Nurses going to food banks, and you're refusing to even discuss the issue, just want to talk about next year.
No, what we're saying is it's this coming year, the pay that would apply from April, and it's about how we get the whole of system working better. One of the things that nurses, indeed, and that's what we're discussing with the trade unions in terms of how we get the interfaces, how we get more technology, how we ensure that people can be avoiding what they say to me is often their frustration, the high cost of agency, the technology that is not enabling them to do their jobs as effectively as they want, many of the irritations in terms of for example, having to phone around to get information in hospitals. I was at Maidstone last week looking at how much better it was for staff, where there's a control centre in place, where they've invested in technology, where they're able to get better flow into the hospital. So there's things we can do better in terms of getting the system to work. That's what the unions themselves said they wanted to see on Monday. There's opportunities for us to get those sort of systems in place. So there's a range of things we can do. Of course, the pay review bodies is the right process to do that. That's something, as I say, even the opposition recognise that we should settle these things through the pay review bodies. But we're listening to the unions, we're engaging further with them today, and we're discussing that across the government.
We've got to say goodbye to you, Health Secretary, but it's not just about money, all of this. I mean, you've mentioned a few times agency staff there and the high cost of them, but actually agency staff, why do we hire them in the first place? Because they're a low cost, because they don't have pensions or holidays or all sorts of things. So that's all a bit confused. And just the idea we've got to value people who work in the health service and people who do certain jobs. So it's not all just about money, and that's what the ambulance drivers are trying to draw attention to today. Good luck in your efforts and your endeavours.
It is. No, and I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I agree. One of the things, actually, when I go and visit and speak to paramedics, actually they say to me, more than pay, their central frustration is those handover delays. That is causing huge frustration to staff in the ambulance service. That is why we're focused on the patients that could be released from hospital. That's why we're putting extra money into that issue of what's called delayed discharge in order to free up capacity. If we free up capacity in the hospitals, that in turn frees up capacity in the emergency departments and tackles what is the central frustration of so many other paramedics. It is those handover delays.
Well, good luck to you, what you're trying to do, Steve Barclay, and, let's hope everybody can reach a satisfied conclusion all this as we move forward. We say thank you for your time and good luck. Thank you very much indeed, Steve Barclay.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll be back in a moment with more on what the unions think of the government's news strike legislation.
every morning from 6 o'clock. We'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents. Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
The government vows to protect lives with a bill to curb strikes as ambulance workers walk out today.
Hello there, very good morning to you just after 7 o'clock on this Wednesday, the 11th of January. Thank you for your company. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Unions have attacked a new bill aimed at curbing the impact of strike action, calling it undemocratic. Introducing the legislation, the Business Secretary Grant Shapps said he was duty-bound to protect the lives of the British people.
This comes as 25,000 ambulance workers and call handlers walk out across England and Wales today. Longer waits for 999 and 111 calls are expected, and there will be fewer ambulances on the roads.
The Foreign Secretary will meet with Northern Ireland's party leaders today to discuss the impact of the protocol that follows a breakthrough in negotiations between Britain and the EU that would give Brussels access to UK trade data.
At the Golden Globes, Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans and The Banshees of Inisherin won big last night. The awards ceremony, which returned to screens following a series of controversies last year, also saw Austin Butler win Best Actor for his portrayal of Elvis.
Lots of you getting in touch this morning via the usual ways, Twitter and email on the strikes. Julie says, I have every sympathy with the NHS strikes. The NHS is on its knees already. Patients are in danger and dying because of a lack of staff and resources. If they don't take this stand now, then God help us all.
Now, here's a very interesting point from Lauren. Thank you for this, Lauren. She says, regarding ambulances, for which we have the strike today, I live in the province of British Columbia in Canada. If we call for ambulance service either by air or ground, there is a cost of $80. That's about 50 quid in British money. There is a lower or no cost charge if you're on low income and or means dependent. Maybe this would work in the UK. Maybe it would. Very interesting point.
Yeah, and lots of you with your dating icks as well. Karen says, when saliva gathers in the corner of the mouth. Charlie says, when I used to smoke, if the person I dated smoked cheap brands, we called them cleaner ciggars. Oh, he's naming brands. I don't want to do that. But he didn't like the cheap brands of cigarettes. Keep your icks coming in.
Keep them coming. So, top story this morning is the Business Secretary Grant Shapps has set out new laws yesterday requiring a minimum level of service for the public sector during strikes.
Unions have already threatened legal action against the government if the bill's passed, describing the legislation as undemocratic.
Well, we've just spoken to the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, and he told us the government is working with the trade unions.
Open to discussing in terms of this year's pay review body that will want to take on board what has happened with inflation. We're keen to work with the trade unions in terms of our evidence to the pay review body. That's what we had constructive discussions with them on Monday about. It's what I'm meeting the Doctors' Union to discuss further today. So it's important in terms of this coming year's pay review body that we get that right, that we work constructively together on the evidence that goes in, and of course that will take on board what has happened over the last year.
Well, this comes as thousands of ambulance staff walk out today in an ongoing dispute. Our West Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, has all the details.
It's a sound that will comfort some and concern others. But today, no matter the feeling, fewer sirens will be heard on the road. For the second time in less than a month, thousands of ambulance workers in Wales and England are on strike. Despite crisis talks between the Department for Health and union leaders at Unison and GMB on Monday, the walkout couldn't be stopped. At the heart of the dispute, pay. While visiting a hospital in London yesterday, the Health Secretary spoke of how it wouldn't be appropriate to return to last year's pay review, but didn't rule out backdating pay in the next.
The key focus of the meeting was to look at next year's pay review body and the evidence that we submit to that. We want to work constructively with the unions in terms of the evidence that is submitted there. But of course, as part of that meeting, we also listened to the trade unions in terms of their concerns.
Only the most serious of emergencies, including cardiac arrests, will be responded to today. Individual ambulance trusts have agreed a basic level of service with unions. But the government has criticised leaders for not setting a national standard. Now new legislation has been introduced in Parliament by the Business Secretary aimed at securing a minimum level of safety.
A lack of timely cooperation from the ambulance unions meant employers could not reach agreement nationally for minimum safety levels during recent strikes, and health officials were left guessing at the likely minimum coverage, making contingency planning almost impossible and putting everyone's constituents' lives at risk.
In a response, Unison's General Secretary Christina McAneer said, "Ministers should be putting all of their energies into solving the NHS dispute, not worsening relations with health workers. Unions want to work with the government to secure a pay deal, but attacking workers makes that much harder. Despite the industrial action, health bosses are encouraging you to call 999 for serious emergencies."
If you have a life-threatening illness, you must ring 999. Your call will be answered by an experienced call handler. They will assess you, and if you need an emergency ambulance, you will receive an emergency ambulance.
With little hope of a deal to end the action now, more ambulance strikes are planned for within the fortnight. Will Hollis for GB News.
Well, joining us now for more reaction is the Deputy Political Editor of HuffPost UK, Sophia Slade. Good morning again to you, Sophia. First of all, your response then to that interview with the Health Secretary there, absolutely adamant that they're doing the right thing here.
Yeah, he was. I think just his tone was quite gentle, I thought. And I wanted to read maybe a little bit of hope into that maybe they are edging closer to a deal, certainly with the health unions and things like that. But it was interesting, you know, he was swerving a lot of your questions. You know, you tried to sort of pin him down to take responsibility for what was going on and things like that, but he wasn't interested in any of that. So I think, you know, sort of behind the scenes, what we understand, us journalists, is that, you know, Steve Barclay, the Health Secretary, is sort of keen to do a deal with the health unions. Certainly the nursing unions, the sense is that they'd like to sort of backdate the next pay agreement that they come to and things like that. But obviously he's got a battle in his hands with the Treasury and our Prime Minister, who was, you know, previously the Chancellor. And the man who knows where all the money is.
And given this chink of optimism that we were hearing from the RCN, the Royal College of Nursing, do you think that this new anti-strike legislation, as it's being dubbed, will have perhaps damage that progress that's been made, set things back? Because the unions seem to be really enraged by this suggestion by the government of a minimum level of service.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that, actually. I think it's quite confusing, the government's approach, because on one hand, Monday, it was announced, we're bringing in the unions, we're going to have a chat, we're going to try and hash things out. And then Tuesday, Grant Shapps, the business secretary, is in the House of Commons introducing this legislation, which is hugely controversial and has made them really, really angry. The quotes coming out of the union bosses is, well, you clapped for us and now you're going to sack us. And they're not really the sound bites that the government wants, I'm sure.
Although, of course, Grant Shapps at pains yesterday at the dispatch box to say, hang on a minute, the army don't strike, police don't strike. I've never heard of anyone being sacked because of trying to strike. Was that an unfair comparison?
No, and I think it's an easy argument actually to make to the public, because it's frightening, isn't it, as a member of the public, the idea that you might not be able to get an ambulance today. When you go to hospital, you're going to have difficulties being seen by a doctor. So it's an easy argument to make to the public. But what I would probably argue is that, is this legislation going to help the current wave of strikes that we're experiencing right now and in the coming weeks? I would honestly say that it won't, because it's got a long journey through Parliament and through to the Lords as well.
OK. Tell you what we're going to do now. We're going to bring in Steve Headley. Steve's big...
he's going to be joining us in just a moment, in fact. Yes, he's not yet here. He's coming in. Let's get another question to Sophia in the meantime, because obviously the spotlight very much on where they're going in all of this, and the government absolutely adamant that there is no crisis in the NHS, that this is just a challenging time.
Yeah, it's kind of nothing to see here sort of tone, isn't it? I mean, he was Steve Barclay, the health secretary, was talking about flu, I think, when you were interviewing him a few minutes ago and things like that. And they keep sort of going back to pressures of the pandemic, the usual winter pressures or the backlogs and things like this. But, sort of Labour or the unions would point out, well, hold on, guys, the Conservatives have been in power for 12 years, 13 years. What have you done on this? It's been on your watch that we're in this huge crisis.
Well, listen, Steve Headley does join us now, big union man, former RMT General Secretary as well. Steve, good to see you. I'd just like to take your perspective, though, as an overseer now of things, and yesterday with what the Business Secretary, Grant Shapps, is trying to do. I can see now a tactic from the government where they're relying on public opinion, and there's various charts about if the public supports certain strikes, very big into the health sector, and the public are prepared to support that, which means the government will be keen to settle that one. When it comes to what's happening on the railways, 50-50, not so much, which gives government and the train companies more leverage against what's happening there. So yesterday, that gives the Business Secretary a chance to introduce this new law, or what he's trying to do. So with a minimum level of service. What do you make with what Grant Shapps is trying to do? Do you think it'll get through the House and the Lords?
Yeah, I think it will. It'll probably be amended somewhat in the Lords, but it will get through, given the majority they've got. But I think the whole thing's nonsense, and I've just brought sort of proof. Here it is, £42 billion in unclaimed taxes. You've got about £16 billion being offshored. So if all that money was collected, you could settle all these outstanding strikes and give the public sector workers, the health workers, the rail workers and everybody else the raises that they want.
Let me tell you something. I think, and I'll be quite controversial here, people don't give a rat's ass unless it affects them, right? And when it begins to affect them, then they have an opinion. So if their day is disrupted by rail strikes, and they're fine. If their health's affected by what's going on in hospitals, they'll get involved in all of this. And the government know this. And one of the things always made out against what's happening in the rails is that you guys, have a big average salary. I know this is not true, but and talk about train drivers, which are members of ASLEF and whatever. Could you tell people, could you outline to people who actually make up the RMT union?
Well, it's everybody from the sandwich maker to the signaller, really. So you've got people on minimum wage, you've got people on London living wage, and then you do have, as you go through the grades, you've got a lot of people on about 24,000, 25,000 who do heavy overtime. And then you have people who are on 50-odd thousand, like train drivers and signallers.
Yeah.
So if you take the means average, and not the average, then a lot of people would be below that.
And this is where it affects people. It should be important to people how much these workers are paid. People who check rail lines, you know, who go out at 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning, make repairs and make sure rail lines are fair, are safe and whatever. No one ever thinks that their journey is safe because somebody has been doing that during the middle of the night.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the places where they want to make cuts, and it amazes me really that you've got the former Chancellor whose wife, multi-millionaire, who didn't pay any taxes, they offshored them a non-don status. They get absolutely upset when working class people are making a living, when they're making a decent living. They can't seem to stand it at all. You've got these plutocrats who, you know, make an art out of tax avoidance. And it doesn't sit right with me, because when working class people get paid, they spend the money in this country. It contributes towards the economy in this country. But when you've got these people, these non-doms, and these people offshoring the tax, it doesn't get spent here.
Well, of course, people who are non-dom do pay tax on anything they earn in this country, and they've been at pains to sort out the status of the Prime Minister's wife. But
well,
just
at 42 billion would seem to point the other ways, wouldn't it?
I'm sure there's a lot of wastage across the public sector as well. Look, taxpayers pay a huge amount of money towards the railways, to the tune of £1,800 per household over the last 6 years. Now, the role of a responsible government is to make sure that they get good value for money. For what
The role of a
taxpayers
responsible
are paying.
government would make sure that we're not in that situation where we are paying £1,800.
Right, so what they're trying to do now
Why is the railways
is
in such a mess created by the government?
Well, you've had 28 years of privatisation, and you've got the ridiculous spectacle that the rolling stock companies who rent the trains to the train operating companies paid out over 100 million when hardly any trains were running over the COVID period. They paid out over 100 million.
Subsidised again by the taxpayers.
Exactly, but they paid out 100 million to their shareholders, OK? So you may as well cut out the middleman. The government may as well give the money straight to the shareholders. Well, this is nonsense. This is why you've got the highest fares in Europe, outside Japan, the highest fares in the world, and why you've got the railways in crisis.
Yeah. But, you know, you talk about the working man in all of this. What about the businesses that have been absolutely destroyed by these endless strikes? Those people who are trying to run small businesses, coming out of COVID themselves, who have lost huge amounts of money. The cost of these strikes so far, £1.7 million to the UK economy. People can't get to work.
I think you're wrong. It's probably 1.7 billion, isn't it?
Is that not what I said? Sorry.
Oh, you said million.
Oh, right. Sorry, 1.7 billion. Thank you for correcting me. Yeah, people can't get to work. People can't get to hospital appointments. People can't get to funerals.
Well, you're absolutely right. And what a nonsense it is. The whole lot could be settled for a fraction of that. So why don't they just settle it? Because they want to punch up with a trade union and an excuse to bring in draconian authoritarian legislation that prevents people going on strike.
Steve, we hear that the rail minister, Hugh Merriman, he's understood to have left open the possibility of an extra 2% being found with a meeting with Mick Lynch, which happened on Monday. This will be for 22-23, backdated to January last year. Do you sense that there is a breakthrough about to happen, or there's a settlement about to be reached?
Well, I think the RMT want to find a settlement. They've done an appalling deal in Scotland, which was 5% plus 750 quid, which was consolidated in the pay, which I think was an awful deal, half a rate of inflation. So I think the RMT bureaucrats, who will never break the anti-trade union laws because it will jeopardise their positions and their money, will do a deal. They'll do a deal, but the government won't give them a fig leaf deal for which they can hide behind.
Yeah, but can I just to pick up on something you said, can I just ask you how you think this legislation will stop people from striking? Because this is the same legislation that is used in France, one of the most famous countries in the world, for striking. It just means that there is a minimum level of service. That's all it does. Please explain to me how it will stop people to have the right to strike.
It won't stop people striking. What'll mean that the strikes will go on longer, because people will go out for 8 days instead of 4.
Right.
So you have massive disruption over a longer period of time. But the reality is this, look, if people are prevented from going on strike, and I encourage all workers out there now, don't leave this in the hands of union bureaucrats. Set up your own strike committees in your own unions and across unions. Because if it comes to breaking the law, that's what you're going to have to do.
Going to have to break the law?
Absolutely. That's how the trade union movement was founded. When they told Paul, what's going to be next? They're going to deport people to Australia. Because this legislation, when you're talking about the rights of the individual, what they're saying with this legislation, if people refuse to scab and cross a picket line, then those people can be prosecuted and sacked. That's what they're saying.
Right.
Okay. So on one hand, we've got the guardians of individual rights, but on the other hand, we're going to prosecute you if you. And I'll tell you what, to me, any decent trade unionism, that's a line in the sand. You do not cross a picket line.
OK. Where do you stand on... we had the business secretary on yesterday, and basically we were saying, you know, particularly in the rail situation, it's like turkeys voting for Christmas. Because they're going to have to be job redundancies. They talk about whatever settlement they're going to reach, they're talking about, well, we don't need ticket operators anymore. We don't need drivers anymore because automation. There are going to be big job losses as a result of any settlement.
Well, what they're trying to do is restructure the railway. They know that a lot of those jobs are necessary. For example, at the minute, you've got about 100,000 people with PTS cards, which personal track safety cards, and they're brought in on the weekend to do engineering works. During the week, they might go and dig in a hole somewhere, you know, working on a building site, whatever they're doing. And what they want to do is casualise our industry, like they've done with the building industry, so they can bring people in. They don't have to pay them pensions. They don't have to pay holiday pay, sick pay, all the rest of it. So they know that those people are wanted, but what they want to do is another attack on working class people, casualise the industry.
Yes. Do you know, I smile on the narrative that comes with newspapers and certain interviewers who talk about, you know, businesses and working people and whatever it is. Do people not realise that 99.9% of us are working people and we don't have any say or any right? And as soon as people realise that and maybe joined unions and saw safety in unions, the world might be a better place. But, you know, I know that will be a very controversial thing to say. But... would you join a union?
Oh, I wouldn't say on air what my view is.
Would you not?
No,
you're not a member of the National Union of Journalists?
I'm not a member.
She'd get sacked if she...
Yeah, exactly. Steve Headley, former RMT General Secretary, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much.
Good to talk to you, thank you.
Right, 7:20. Let us know your thoughts on all of that. Are you
maybe
in
not.
favour
Maybe
of
we
the
don't want to know all
strike?
your thoughts. My point being that we're not all as independent as we think we are. And, you know, what do you think? Is there a role for unions in the country? You may use the term responsible unions. What is responsible? The Business Secretary, Grant Shapps, will have a different view maybe than you will on that. 7:20 is the time. Latest stories are these.
The Foreign Secretary says post-Brexit trading issues that undermine Northern Ireland's place in the UK must be addressed. James Cleverly will meet with Northern Ireland's party leaders in Belfast today to discuss the impact of the Northern Ireland Protocol. Mr Cleverly, along with the Northern Ireland Secretary Chris Heaton-Harris, will also speak about the stalemate within Stormont.
A counter-terrorism investigation is underway after a package arriving at Heathrow Airport was found to have traces of uranium. Scotland Yard says Border Force detected the substance in routine screening at the end of last month. The forces said the amount of contaminated material was extremely small and it poses no threat to the public.
Award season's kicked off in LA. The 80th Golden Globe Awards took place whilst you were sleeping. The Banshees of Inisherin was the big winner of the night, and Steven Spielberg won Best Motion Picture for The Fabelmans, based on his own life story. He also won Best Director.
Right now, things that make you go, ick.
Ooh, yeah, so this is when you're dating, you really like someone, things are going really well, and then suddenly they do something and it's a deal breaker. You've been sending in your icks, it's been making me laugh. Wendy says this, and I have to say loads of you agree with this. Someone that chews food noisily, it's a deal breaker.
No.
No?
See, my wife has a condition, right, called... So me breathing causes my wife...
That's just called marriage.
No, it's called misphonia.
All right.
So, yeah, and a lot of people have this. So that they hear, some people don't hear things the way other people hear them. So, for instance, some people could taste soup, drink soup, and that would be seen as slurping soup to other people, like...
Quite interesting. Is that what you do?
No, it's not what I do.
She just hears it differently from reality.
She hears it differently. So she has this condition which a lot of people suffer from, and people are very sensitive to noise. So it just depends.
Yes. What's your ick?
I think personal hygiene. I think crudity. I don't like crudity. I don't mind foul language at all, but I don't like crudity. I don't like people who talk about bodily functions.
I don't like people that don't like kids.
Yeah?
Or the way I look at the whole ick story is I just flip it and I go, what do I like? And what I do like on a date is if someone says, oh, that's a really cute kid, or that's a really cute dog, or somebody's really respectful to waiters. So reverse it. If they're not nice to kids, dogs, or waiters, no thanks.
But I think there's a time and a place where you can't be nice to kids.
No.
There is, like airplanes. Children
No.
shouldn't be on airplanes. They should be
They
banned.
shouldn't be. No, grumpy old people shouldn't be allowed on planes. How about that?
Children shouldn't be allowed in cinemas, for
We were
instance.
all children once. Why can't we be like the Spanish and be really nice towards children? They come up and they squeeze their cheeks when you're on holiday and they're welcomed everywhere you go. France, oh my goodness, so much as the sight of a child and they're disgusted.
Yeah.
We're somewhere in the middle, I think. Anyway, what are your icks? Keep them coming in. It's making us laugh on what is otherwise a bit of a gloomy day.
Paul Coit makes you go ick.
No, it doesn't. Quite the reverse.
You said that.
He's got beautiful manners. Stop it.
Beautiful manners, beautiful eyes, you know,
Beautiful
everything.
knowledge.
But beautiful stories, including United.
The beautiful
Manchester
game.
United and the beautiful game. Stunning victory in the Carabao Cup last night.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back at 7:28. Still to come on the programme this morning.
20 past 8, we'll be taking a look at the winners and the best dressed from this year's Golden Globes, which happened last night.
At 9:15, Dr. Michael Mosley will give us all the details of his new diet plan that helps you to lose weight while still enjoying the food you love. What's not to love about that?
Well, discipline. That's not what's to love. Unless I was to have that food served up to me, like if I could afford it, the thing that I would have is a chef.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'd have a chef, because why put yourself through all of these things? Are you disciplined with, like...
I am at the moment.
If you had to stick to a
I'm a
diet,
bore.
you could...
I am,
you
but
could
only
measure.
because I'm an all or nothing person. At the moment, it's just nothing. But the rest of the year, it's anything goes. Anyway, let us know your diet tips.
But Michael
your thoughts.
Mosley, he's a
an
genius,
expert.
very, very popular with all this. What time do you say he's on? Quarter past
9.
9, very good. And you can join in any of our discussions. Yeah, we'll come to those very shortly. You know what to do. You can email or you can tweet. It's that time to bring you the back pages. They shape up like this today. We begin with the Star. It runs with goal rash. Marcus Rashford scoring twice to fire Man United into the semi-finals of the League Cup. Here's the Mirror. No ordinary Joe Linton after Newcastle reached their first domestic semi-final for 18 years. And the Express celebrates Dan the Man after Dan Burns opened his goal-scoring account for his boyhood club, Newcastle. Paul Coyte with us now. So, Carabao Cup last night. What are the main things to take away?
The fact that you're extremely happy, I imagine. Is that right? Is that the right one?
I'm not happy it wasn't on TV, but I'm happy, yeah.
Well, listen, you take the result. I mean, 8 on the bounce now, Manchester United. I mean, Manchester United are looking terrific. I doubted him, didn't I? Eric Ten Hag.
City up next for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, who knows how that's going to go? 8 on the bounce for Manchester United, looking great. 2 more for Marcus Rashford, who's probably the form of his life at the moment.
Yeah.
And all looking very good. All looking very good. And then the draw for the semi-final is going to be later today.
A lot of people thought Marcus Rashford wasn't an out-and-out number 9. And now with Ronaldo going, he really is coming into his own.
I think a lot has got to do with the manager. I really do. I really think the way he's treated the players, what he's done... And I've said it loads of times, I didn't think it was going to work with Ten Hag. I really didn't think it was going to work, but it's working terrifically. And Rashford's looking great. And they're talking about Wout Weghorst. You know, Wout...
Yeah, so tell us about him. So he's in Turkey at the moment.
He is. He played at Burnley. He didn't really go so well at Burnley. 6'6", big centre forward, and it didn't really work out there. So he's gone to Besiktas over in Turkey.
Sorry?
That's Besiktas.
Okay.
That's... You're going to bless me there for a second. So, anyway, he's playing over there with Dele Alli, although probably Wout is playing better than Dele Alli because they want him out. But now, Ten Hag, because he's Dutch and he has a relationship with him and knows him, he's going to bring him over to Manchester United. It looks like on a loan.
So the thing about him is that he just gives different options because he's tall, gangly, awkward.
Yeah. That's your perfect athlete, isn't it? Tall, gangly, and awkward.
Yeah.
So I think I think it's another option. It's another option for him while he looks for a maybe an out-and-out number 9 that he will come in. So I imagine that's going to happen. That'll be a loan. So just another choice for him to use.
Newcastle,
I tell you, Newcastle, though. Newcastle, they haven't won anything since the 1950s. Last time they reached a semi-final of the League Cup was back in 1976. And they ended up going to the final there and interestingly, lost to Manchester City, who, it could happen again. We got 76. We remember I did mention this to you, Dennis Chewett.
Yeah.
The great Dennis Chewett wonder goal for 1976, the overhead kick, which I did see recently, and it seemed a bit lame compared to when I was a kid. But Newcastle really are looking terrific. And Dan Burn.
He's got to be feeling good this morning.
I tell you what, if you were Dan Burn. See, Dan Burn...
Local lad,
grew up watching Newcastle, sat at the Gallowgate end, and there he was, 11 years old, and then he was let go by his beloved club. And obviously this is the most difficult thing for a young player to go through. Goes off, then he signed from Brighton, and then he's brought back to Newcastle, scores a fantastic goal yesterday, and it's just like...
it's the dream.
The old Roy the Rovers stuff. Yeah. So fantastic for Dan Burn. Newcastle, again, they've spent well. They've spent a lot of money recently, but they are looking excellent, so a great chance in the League Cup.
Is Real Madrid hovering for Harry Kane?
I think there's probably talk about it, but whether he's going to go, I think Harry's not going to go. I mean, Isabel knows that Harry would never dream of leaving Tottenham Hotspur and going to Real Madrid. The thing is, though, with Harry, of course, always the talk is going to be, oh yeah, can you end your career and you've got to win trophies and, you know, how could you'll be judged by that. He's about to break Jimmy Greaves' record of scoring more goals than any other Spurs player in history. He's just 2 goals off.
2 goals off.
2 goals off, and the North London derby against Arsenal.
1 to equal it, 1 to break it.
That's correct.
Yeah. Jimmy Greaves, what a player.
Absolutely.
Romeo Beckham, how's he doing? Is he as good as his dad?
I don't reckon so.
No.
I don't reckon so. He actually he played for Brent. Well, he's actually been at Inter Miami, which of course Dad runs.
Right.
So he's in the B team at Inter Miami.
What are you suggesting there?
I would not be it's just a pure coincidence,
Right,
I think,
okay.
surely. So Romeo Beckham, then he's moved over to Brentford, and he's playing for their B team, which is their development side. So they usually have about 100 people come up and watch them. It was strangely about 550 people came out yesterday to watch the team. And David was there, and it was interesting because the thing that was being said is that Romeo, it's what number he would wear.
And where for art thy number, Romeo?
Well, exactly it. We're 4 out there, Romeo. They were thinking, and he ended up wearing a number 21, which ruined the gag for me entirely, almost as badly as you ruined my gag there for me. But,
Great minds.
There we are. Shakespearean minds. That's what it is. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, he's 20. We could say he's only 20, but usually at the age of 20, you would certainly be making inroads.
I like the fact that
he's not
Bex
bad
had to... Was it Bex or Romeo who had to climb a fence to get away from the fans?
Yes, I think it was probably both. It's just follow Dad and climb over the fence.
It's like me leaving this building every day.
Is it
Perhaps
really?
Jumping out from behind bins.
Behind bushes.
Unbelievable.
It must drive you crazy.
It wasn't that much fun, was it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a wee bit worried. I just saw some stuff in the papers yesterday and the FA Cup tie between Sheffield Wednesday and Newcastle.
Yeah.
And it's all sort of quiet, but a lot of people were concerned that there may have been overcrowding at that game.
Well, obviously overcrowding is something we don't ever want to see, but the fact that it actually happened at Hillsborough again, where of course, you know, we know about the Liverpool fans that died at Hillsborough back in '89. Now, and it was at the same end as well. It was at Leppings Lane end as well. So Newcastle fans, it's I think about 50 or so or even more, Newcastle are asking for fans to send emails of what happened. And it seemed the situation is that there was overcrowding going in, which you can't even bear thinking about.
Oh, scary.
The fact that not only would it happen, but the fact that it's happening at the same place again. Now, there were a lot of seats towards the front that were netted over, often when they're not used.
Yeah.
And a lot of those Newcastle fans had tickets for those seats. So as you can imagine, there are thousands coming through. They're funneling through into a bottleneck, and then automatically there was a crush, and which is a huge worry and a huge warning as well. So there is going to be an inquiry about it. Thank goodness nobody was hurt.
Yeah.
But it's always very, very close.
And yet there's still, so many people are in favour of standing coming back. I don't get the attraction with it myself, but
see, I do. I do see that it's okay because whereas standing, there's safe standing. Because if you go to games, people do stand, and mostly away fans, even if they're in seats, they will always stand. It just seems to be the way it is. So if you're going to have people standing, at least make it safe, and that seems to be the way things are going.
Paul, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Paul Coit there, back again tomorrow.
And we'll be back with the papers in just a sec.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory. Twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents. Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236. And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So here we are now going through the newspapers. We've got David Miller, we've got Scarlett Maguire, and they have got all the pages you need to talk about. The Daily Telegraph's talking about King Charles and a state visit, David. Where to?
To France will be his first state visit in March. The reason I chose this is that the tragedy of Harry, well, there are many tragedies of Harry, beginning with being Harry, but the real problem is that unless he is dealt with in some way or another, all he will do is cast a shadow over his father's reign. I mean, I'm an exact contemporary of Charles at university. I've always had a soft corner for him. I think there are weaknesses, particularly in the way he's handled family matters, but he has... the real asset is he cares about issues, and he's been ahead of the game on a lot of issues. He cannot allow his reign to be messed up by this errant son and his
What would you do
wife.
if you were him with Harry?
I think I would probably say he can come to the coronation while making it clear that if he comes, he'll be in Rosed. And look, Harry deserves no favours from the royal family or from Britain. But the
problem... if you don't give him favours, he's going to whinge and whinge and whinge.
Yeah, but I think at a certain point people will be fed up with that, because the alternative for Charles is not a very palatable one. He, for instance, is concerned about the environment. He has a long, proud role in advocating some of these issues. He obviously gets on well with Macron. Well, someone's got to, and it's good that he does. But basically, if this state visit to France, his first state visit, we need a decent relationship with France. We cannot write off our relationship with France. But if everything Charles does is overshadowed by the shade of Harry hanging heavily around, I just think the father will destroy his opportunity to make an impact late in life. And I think he owes it to himself. But Charles is not good with these domestic
Well, he loves his son,
issues.
and that's the thing. It's a family as well as
But
an
can it
institution.
really be-
And those lines are clearly a problem for him.
Can it be a blame? Can it be a love where it doesn't matter how the son behaves.
Yeah, but I think a lot of parents do struggle with that, don't they? Disciplining naughty children.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think it's very important. I don't think that something like Harry's behaviour actually overshadows the Charles visit to France. I think that it will be that whatever the media does in Britain or in France, that the meeting between Charles and Macron will be important. And I actually do agree with David that we do need a proper relationship with France. But actually, the thing about Harry, I mean, it's like, you know, if he comes to the coronation, you put him in Rosette. No, if he comes to the coronation, he is the king's son. But what I found, actually, at the Queen's funeral is I have less time for Andrew than Harry, but the two people who risked their lives were not allowed to wear their service uniforms, whereas Charles and Anne, who, you know, have never seen a bullet, right, were out there being... And I actually think... I think there's a thing about fairness, and I think that we have to be very, very careful about pushing Harry away, and actually a lot of people thinking that isn't the way to behave.
But can I tell you something? That Harry is exploiting the family for his own commercial benefit. And there's nothing he wouldn't sell. And the danger with giving Harry access to these events is you'll just have another Netflix film and all the rest of it.
It's an unsolvable problem, I fear.
We had a big union man on the programme earlier, Scarlett, and he was pointing out this next story that you've got. This is in the Times, and this is the taxman failing to collect a possible £42 billion in unclaimed taxes.
I know. I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? This would solve our problems. We could pay the nurses, we could pay the ambulance drivers. 42 billion. And let's remember, it's not from ordinary people. We pay our taxes at source, right? The 42 billion is from people who hide their money, who deliberately think. And then what we discover is that, of course, in all the cuts, you cut the tax office. So actually, they're not doing it right. And I mean, we have to remember that the anti-fraud task force that was set up by Rishi Sunak has been disbanded. Well, you know, it would be really good if we did that. And that a Conservative peer resigned because all the fraud in PPE was not being dealt with properly. Yeah. I mean, actually...
And that is a scandal.
It is a scandal.
There's also a scandal from the tax department, I do have to say, and declare an interest in all of this, the Department of Thievery, where they, you know, have retrospective rules, this awful retrospective thing where they say, oh, we know we said you're self-employed, but actually we've changed our minds, so we want 10 years back taxes,
yeah, that's
on people. So it works both ways. They don't go after the big boys, the ones who are stashing away. They will go after the gardeners, the locums, the window cleaners, the whatever. And but I have very little time for HMRC. They'll get away with anything now because the country's broke. So and nobody's any sympathy for anybody who's deemed to owe tax in any way. Ukraine, this is from the Telegraph. The head of Russia's Wagner Group says his troops have taken control of Solidar. What is the Wagner Group?
The Wagner Group is a bunch of mercenaries, some Russians, some not, and they have a reputation for being a vicious group. And they are spearheading the efforts by Putin to first of all, hold on to, and secondly, recapture some of the land that they had originally taken. And I think what the significance of this to me is that what we are failing to do is to keep up the level of support to the Ukrainians. And what they need now are tanks, armoured vehicles, that sort of thing. And it's not in our interests, forget about their interests, it's not in our interest to let the Russians back into this. And I chose this because it's significant that Russia is taken back a town, albeit not much of a town now, beaten to a pulp. But essentially, if we neglect Ukraine, the Russians will come back in, and that will be bad for everybody, not just for the Ukrainians, but for the rest of us. And I just think please, we can have 2 minutes talking about issues other than Harry.
Right.
Yes, fair. Amen to that. But let's end on a light note, because I've spotted this story chosen by you, Scarlett. Matt Hancock, what's he been up to in Turkey? The rumour mill.
I know. So Matt Hancock goes to Istanbul probably for a dirty weekend, right? But actually, what everybody says is, has he gone for a hair transplant?
Right. Well, the telltale will be, has he shaved his head?
Absolutely, and he's denying it, and he says he was just there to see the sun. But it's hair transplant or teeth. Absolutely, probably not a boob job.
All he has to do is come to GB News. You can have some of mine.
Well, there's more than
I'll do him a good deal. It's going to cost him, but it'll be expensive compared to flogging all the way to Turkey, or wherever he's going.
People who have had hair transplants.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong, but I agree it causes a great deal of distress
to
many men. I think for women it's even more distress if they lose.
But you've never had to have one. You've got great hair.
Well,
says he lovingly.
It's not at your level, but you know I'm happy enough.
But it would grow to that. You just have to keep yourself trimmed. Whereas I can be however I want to be.
But what was I going to say there about hair? Yeah, the amount of people on the telly. I mean, I can sit there and go, he's had it, he's had it, he's had it.
Really?
Oh my God.
I can't tell at all.
I mean, you cannot turn on. How come there are no bald men on TV?
Right.
They're not. Who's bald on TV?
Harry. Prince Harry.
Yeah. But there are very few. There's
Matt Hancock.
The guy that used to work with David Williams, whatever.
Oh, Matt Lucas.
Matt Lucas, right? So outside that, you're really
I don't
struggling.
really mind baldness. I don't understand why there is.
No, but
such
I know.
a
I
thing with it.
I
My
think
brother went
male
bald quite
baldness
young,
is very
and
sexy.
He's able to pull it off. He's got good bone structure. Very
men who are
handsome.
over 40 and 50 and have this incredible thick growth on their hair.
What, like David Mellor, who's got gorgeous
This is all
hair?
authentic. Come and have a free tug.
Oh, gosh. I think we'll pass on that.
Pass on that
We say goodbye and thank you to Scarlett Maguire, former Labour advisor, and David Mellor, former Chief Secretary of the Treasury. We'll have more from both of them just after 8:30. Thank you both.
Isabel, I could name names. I'm surprised you don't notice all the suspects.
I know some in our industry.
Yes.
I know for a fact, but I think it's great. Well, I'm all for it.
Yes, it
Why
works,
not?
and that's what I would say to anybody who's thinking about getting it.
It really does work. But you have to do it early on.
Apparently
Can't leave it
pills
too
are the
late.
key.
And then you have to take pills afterwards.
Pills.
Forever.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
But I hope never to have to discover any of that.
Well, I think
you
you're all
won't.
right.
Do you have hair that grows in any other part of your body? Is it just
The
your hair?
eyebrows
Well, I
come
can
in
give you
all
a guided
sorts
tour. There's
Oh, my
quite a lot of
gosh.
it about.
Well, we're going to move
I thought we didn't.
swiftly on.
Eamonn, I thought this was the sort of thing you didn't
This
like
is the guy who
talking
said it's
about.
ick.
Absolutely.
His chest.
I
Talking about
was
his
toilet talk.
Does he have a hairy back?
Yes, we don't need to go into
No,
it all.
no.
We don't need to
Hair,
go into
look.
it all. It is
Too much.
Give it a touch.
7:51.
That's
We say
genuine
goodbye
hair.
and we change the tone and we
Authentic
bring you up to
hair.
date on our top stories. Which
It's
are
the
these?
ambulance strikes today. Thousands of ambulance drivers and workers in England and Wales will go on strike today in their dispute over pay, conditions and the reforming their whole operation. It's a joint action organised by the two unions, GBM and Unison, with a further day of action on the 23rd of this month. The Health Secretary described the strikes as unhelpful but insisted he is working with the trade unions.
Saying to people, if they do face genuine life-threatening issues, then of course the response is to phone 999, but if not, then to be very mindful of the pressure on the system today.
The Prime Minister and his Japanese counterpart will sign a landmark defence agreement today as fears grow around the threat of China. The treaty, which will be signed at the Tower of London, will allow UK and Japan to deploy military forces in each other's countries. The government's calling it the most significant defence deal between the two nations in more than a century.
Scientists in Sweden have discovered a protein called GFAP that could help detect very early stages of a rare inherited form of Alzheimer's. The protein can appear in blood samples, helping to identify the neurodegenerative disease 10 years before any symptoms begin to appear. What we want to do now is a lot of you may be thinking New Year, New You, and part of that may be changing job, changing
Yes, so many
changing
people
career.
on social media announcing new jobs.
Yeah,
aren't they?
but what are the tricks of the trade? What is the best way to, get your CV under someone's nose, bringing yourself to the attention of possible employers? So joining us now in the studio, Stephen Shepherd. Stephen is a recruitment consultant. So this is a particularly busy time, Stephen, this time of the year for people who want to change.
Yeah, January. Usually a lot of companies, they do their end-of-year budgets.
Yeah.
And then January, they start employing those budgets, and you get a lot of new vacancies, sort of week 2, week 3.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Right, so how do you stand out from the crowd? Because it is an ever increasingly competitive market, isn't it? And, you want to be different.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing really is to do your research. It sounds obvious, but a lot of people don't do it. So research the company you're applying for, research your job, so that when you apply, you can put a cover note that's really particular to that particular vacancy, not sort of a general one.
Do people really not do proper turning up at job interviews, not knowing?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they should just be laughed out of the building.
Yeah, I mean, you would have thought that, but no, people turn up, they haven't really... Sometimes they're put forward for jobs and they've not been given much information about it, for example. But it's really down to you as an individual to do that research, work out whether you want to work for that company.
Yeah,
because
if you have a desire, and, I think it shows. And that's why I believe if you can just be seen. I mean, I know if I was an employer, I would know I wouldn't need to wade through CVs and whatever. I would know you're a person who can work for me, you're a people person, you've got good communicative skills, whatever. Seeing someone, talking to someone must give you such an advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the way you want to get in front of them if you can.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people will do calls over Zoom, but if you can go in and meet with them, you can make that personal connection. It can make all the difference in an interview.
So what is the difference between getting your CV, as Isabel was saying, noticed as opposed to being passed over?
I think the thing to do is just keep it simple. Don't over-design it. Don't put colour bars and logos and things like that on it. Your most recent experience first. And, what a lot of people don't do is, if you've got a really good written reference, put it in your CV.
Yeah.
Because if somebody else is saying how wonderful you are, that's much better than you going, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Right, here's a really shallow question. I'm asking this because over the years I've done so many news stories about how good-looking people just naturally, through unconscious bias, that phrase, get on because people just prefer to be surrounded by good-looking people. I don't know if that's true or not. I've done lots of stories about it. Do you put a picture on your CV or not?
Are you allowed to put a picture in
I
your
don't
CV?
know. I'm asking the expert.
Well, they do in Europe.
OK.
All European CVs will come with a picture. The UK, no, I would say.
You're not allowed?
No, you can if you want to.
But is it a no-no? It's a bit of a come on, mate.
Well, I wouldn't if I were you. I would just leave it off because sometimes the more information you give people, the more reasons you give them for saying no.
OK.
So you want to keep it sort of, your CV quite concise, but key information in there. And like I say, the main thing is if you can get in front of them, and the thing is to smile. Because when you smile at people, it's like affirmation.
Yes.
It makes them feel more at ease. They like you more.
Yeah.
So.
Well, at school we were taught when you go into a job interview, look everybody in the eye, big smile, show your teeth, shake their hands. It was drilled into us from school age.
And look, you got the job.
Well, here I am.
There you go.
Stephen Shepherd, recruitment consultant. A pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you. Take a break there. More on what's happening strike-wise today right after this. Don't go away.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News.
Frank,
Fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
The government vows to protect lives with a bill to curb strikes as ambulance workers walk out today.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 11th of January. Trying to get that out. Thank you for your company this morning. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news this morning, unions have attacked a new bill aimed at curbing the impact of strike action, calling it undemocratic. Introducing the legislation, the Business Secretary said he was duty-bound to protect the lives of the British people.
It comes as 25,000 ambulance workers and call handlers walk out across England and Wales today. The Health Secretary has told us this morning both the government and the unions do want a better health service.
There's things we can do better in terms of getting the system to work. That's what the unions themselves said they wanted to see on Monday. There's opportunities for us to get those sort of systems in place.
The Foreign Secretary will meet with Northern Ireland party leaders to discuss the impact of the protocol today. It follows a breakthrough in negotiations between Britain and the EU that would give Brussels access to UK trade data.
Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans and The Banshees of Inisherin won big last night at the Golden Globes. The award ceremony also saw Austin Butler win Best Actor for his portrayal of Elvis.
Thanks very much indeed. You know what to do. Get in touch with us the usual way. Alison says not all nurses work 18-hour shifts. Some do 13 hours, 3 days a week, and have 4 days off. Well, still sounds pretty hard to me. Also, you can get a qualified Band 5 nurse who uses a food bank and get them to explain why they cannot manage their finances. obviously a very caring individual.
Oh, wow.
You are, Alison.
Alan says, I do believe in the right to strike, but I also can't see anything wrong with having a minimal level of service either. This is surely just common sense and essential services and should be supported by all political parties.
And, you know, a few of you reflecting this quite simplistic view of things. Find another job if you don't like your pay or what you do. All these strikes are disgraceful. I don't think it's as easy as that, but anyway, it does reflect what a lot of you are thinking or saying.
And should say, we've been talking about the ick. What gives you the ick on dates? Mick says spitting out bits of food while eating and talking at the same time is the pits. Can't disagree with that. Yuck.
Well, who would do that?
Someone disgusting. Keep your icks
But I'll tell you
coming
what I
in.
don't agree with. You know, a lot of people, I read this stupid thing that people saying, people who talk while they're eating. Well, if you go to dinner, if you go to a restaurant with someone, whatever...
What they mean is, well, there's food in their mouth. In between masticating, you can verbalise. But the rest of the time, keep your mouth shut.
OK.
OK, to our top story this morning, and we are, of course, reflecting the situation with the strikes. The Business Secretary yesterday outlining new laws requiring a minimum level of service for the public sector.
Unions have already threatened legal action against the government if the bill is passed, describing the legislation as undemocratic.
Well, at just before 7 o'clock this morning, we spoke to the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, who told us the government is working with the trade unions.
Open to discussing in terms of this year's pay review body that will want to take on board what has happened with inflation. We're keen to work with the trade unions in terms of our evidence to the pay review body. That's what we had constructive discussions with them on Monday about. It's what I'm meeting the Doctors' Union to discuss further today. So it's important in terms of this coming year's pay review body that we get that right, that we work constructively together on the evidence that goes in, and of course that will take on board what has happened over the last year.
Well, it comes as thousands of ambulance staff walk out in an ongoing dispute over pay.
And resources as well. Our West Midlands reporter Will Hollis has this story.
It's a sound that will comfort some and concern others. But today, no matter the feeling, fewer sirens will be heard on the road. For the second time in less than a month, thousands of ambulance workers in Wales and England are on strike. Despite crisis talks between the Department for Health and union leaders at Unison and GMB on Monday, the walkout couldn't be stopped. Only the most serious of emergencies, including cardiac arrests, will be responded to today. Individual ambulance trusts have agreed a basic level of service with unions. But the government has criticised leaders for not setting a national standard. Now new legislation has been introduced in Parliament by the Business Secretary aimed at securing a minimum level of safety.
A lack of timely cooperation from the ambulance unions meant employers could not reach agreement nationally for minimum safety levels during recent strikes, and health officials were left guessing at the likely minimum coverage, making contingency planning almost impossible and putting everyone's constituents' lives at risk.
In a response, Unison's General Secretary Christina McAneer said, "Ministers should be putting all of their energies into solving the NHS dispute, not worsening relations with health workers. Unions want to work with the government to secure a pay deal, but attacking workers makes that much harder. Despite the industrial action, health bosses are encouraging you to call 999 for serious emergencies."
If you have a life-threatening illness, you must ring 999. Your call will be answered by an experienced call handler. They will assess you, and if you need an emergency ambulance, you will receive an emergency ambulance.
With little hope of a deal to end the action now, more ambulance strikes are planned for within the fortnight.
Go to the picket line live now with our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis. He's in Lincoln this morning. Will, what's going on?
Yes, good morning, Eamonn and Isabel. Well, this is the building where all of the ambulance services, as well as fire and police, head out onto the busy roads of Lincoln. It is a busy road, especially right now, because it is, of course, the morning rush hour, and behind where our camera is, there's cars fleeting back and forward. And for the majority of this morning that we've been hearing lots of noise from those cars, because it does seem like there's a lot of support for these ambulance strikers and the people that are on the picket lines behind me. And the person that's representing many of these people from the GMB union, which are the ones that are on strike here in the East Midlands Ambulance Service Trust area, is Colin Todd. Colin, what does it feel like when you get that support, but are you getting criticism as well this morning?
Well, it's tremendous. The support we've got, as you've already said this morning, has been fantastic. Every car's tooting their support, and I think the public are right behind us here.
You think the public are behind you? Do you think that there's probably going to be some criticism because people worry about whether they're going to be able to get an ambulance if maybe they fall down the stairs? I know things like cardiac arrests are guaranteed, category 1s are guaranteed, but how do you justify potentially putting some people at risk today?
Well, we agree derogations and exemptions with EMAS management, and we have a very good relationship with them. We always try and work it through, and we did on the strike on the 21st of December. In fact, it was the best performing day of the month when we was on strike. People weren't calling 999 unless it was a life-threatening situation, and that's the same today. But as you can see over there, we've got ambulances ready to go. We've got these heroes on the picket line who are ready to go if needs be.
So these ambulances, if there was one of those emergency calls, would literally dip out right behind us?
If needed. Most of the ambulances are kept at the back of the building, but these ones are specifically for the picket line. So if the manager at the site wants one of the pickets to go to a job because they haven't got anyone else, then they'll come and talk to them about that, and that's why they're ready to go.
And then just very quickly, what's your message for Steve Barclay, the Health Secretary, in order to get this sorted out at the moment?
Well, he's actually come and spoke to us for the first time, so that's a start, but actually he needs to put something on the table. But it's a much bigger picture than just pay. Pay is a big issue. People are leaving the service because of pay, but it's actually a bigger issue. It's about the turnaround at the hospitals. It's, you know, these guys can sometimes spend 8, 9, 10, 12 hours at A&E waiting to hand over. That's not good enough for the people of Lincoln or the people of the East Midlands. We don't want that. My members here, these heroes, they want to be saving people and looking after them. What they don't want to be is in the car park at Lincoln A&E or Kings Mill or wherever, waiting to hand over. So there's a whole big issue with the NHS. They're saying they're going to try and put sticking plasters on it with porta cabins. Well, that's a start, but it's a much bigger picture than that.
Colin, thanks for talking to us this morning. The advice very much today is if you do have an emergency, please do call 99, but for everything else, call 111 or look online at how you might be able to get the best help you might need today.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Live from Lincoln there. We go to Westminster, our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, there for us this morning. So the introduction of legislation yesterday from the Business Secretary. How far will it get, Darren? I mean, you know, a lot of people would say it sounds equitable, it sounds fair. The union's not happy with all of this. Will it get through the House? Will it get through the Lords?
I think it will in the end, Eamonn, yes. You have to remember the Conservative Party, despite their troubles and the divisions, have got an 80-seat majority, and I think it will get through Parliament, but not anytime soon. And you're right, it's not just going to face opposition from the Labour Party and indeed other opposition parties in the Commons, but also likely in the Lords too. I think fundamentally the problem for the government is that it will not solve any of these strike actions in the weeks and months to come. And clearly there is a possibility that things are going to get a hell of a lot worse, not just for the government, but for all of us to a large degree. There is talk that junior doctors could be going on strike. There are talks too that we could see a nationwide teachers' strike. We've seen teachers' strikes in various pockets of the country over the last couple of weeks or so. In saying that, there is a form of optimism today with suggestions that actually the government could offer up its offer to rail workers from 8 to 10% that may get that solution over the line. Mick Lynch is meeting the Transport Secretary a little later on this morning, and all this is likely to dominate, I reckon, PMQ's, Prime Minister's Question Time, which resumes a little later on today, the first time Keir Starmer's been pitched up against Rishi Sunak at 12 at noon. But the Conservatives would like to paint Labour in a tricky position in all of this too. You know what, many people saying that Labour oppose these minimum levels of service across different industries, arguing that is the necessary thing to make sure the country can still continue to work during strike action. Though, listening to ambulance workers and those in the NHS, they say even without strike action, there is still, at the moment, Eamonn, no level of minimum service that would be acceptable to the general public.
OK, Darren, thank you very much indeed. Now, with the time at 12 minutes past 8, let's bring you up to date with the latest headlines. And a counter-terrorism investigation is underway after a package arriving at Heathrow Airport was found to have traces of uranium. Scotland Yard says Border Force detected the substance in a routine screening of the item at the end of last month. The force has said the amount of contaminated material was extremely small and poses no threat to the public.
Teachers in Scotland are walking out for a second day today after last-ditch talks yesterday failed to find a solution. The Scottish Teaching Union demanded a 10% pay increase, but the Scottish Government offered only 5%.
More than 270,000 people were homeless in England on any given night last year. That's according to the charity Shelter, which estimates 45% of those were children. The organisation says it's bracing for a further spike in homelessness this year.
Why? Why can we just never get to grips with the homeless situation? And I think shocking to
Yeah, and I think
hear there.
with the situation in rental accommodation, prices having gone up in some parts of this country by 30% on just this time last year.
Yeah.
More and more people just simply can't afford it when the cost of living crisis is hitting. It's a huge issue.
What I don't understand is why we want to sort out the problems in the rest of the world when we can't sort out our own problems with things like foreign aid budgets and whatever. I understand disaster funds, I understand all of that totally. But goodness me, I mean, that homeless thing, why do we ignore it? Why do we pretend it doesn't exist? And you're talking about over 100,000, I think that was just in England, of homeless people are classified as children. So what age is that? Under 18?
Under 18, yeah. But of course, hugely complex issue. A lot of homeless people got complex needs, a lot of them drug users as well. So a very, very complicated issue.
Doesn't matter. People are still sleeping, still having to live out in the cold and the rain and all sorts of things as well. And we do this story every year. We never do anything about it. It doesn't get any better. Now we're going to talk about the police. And look, you all have your say about the police, but my view about the police is that they do a job that the rest of us wouldn't want to do. They do our dirty work. They do government's dirty work as well. And research out this morning shows nearly 1 in 5 officers plan to leave the profession because they're dissatisfied about the way they're treated, the way they're perceived, their morale is low, their pay, they reckon, isn't up to scratch.
Yeah, and that's a huge worry, isn't it? It comes as polling of almost 37,000 officers in England and Wales showed forces to be at crisis point.
Well, joining us this morning, the National Chair of the Police Federation, that's Steve Hartshorn, who's here to tell us more about the results of the research. Steve, good to see you, but, you know, sad to be talking about this. And I think policing is another profession where, and I think this is a fault of society, it's a fault of government, which we just don't show the respect we should, you know, teachers being an example, people who work in the NHS being an example. We're not cultivating these people. I thought there was a big push by the government to get more police officers on board. Why are they not keeping them?
Well, you're right, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's important, and you raise a good point there about sort of doing the dirty work. We're there when people, in times of crisis, in times of need, make a 999 call because we're the option of last resort when there's no one else to turn to. And what's disappointing is when you look at the results of the survey and it says, 1 in 5 of our officers are thinking of resigning in the next 2 years. That's the stark reality now, that pay, pension conditions haven't kept pace with the real terms increases that we need for our members. The cost of living crisis affects everybody. And of course, we want the very best police service we can. If they're not happy because they're not getting the correct pay and conditions being looked after or valued, they're going to leave. They're going to find alternative employment, which makes the public quite vulnerable.
Yeah, and look, it's really important to talk to you about this on a day like today when we are discussing what the implications would be of strike legislation. Now, the police and the army are unique, aren't they, in that they can't strike. And what you're telling us is they are still dissatisfied with their pay and their conditions, but it just means they're leaving the sector. So presumably that needs to be a message then to the government. That could happen right across the board if people aren't allowed to strike freely.
Absolutely, and it's a unique position that as Crown servants, as you say, with us like the military, we can't strike. And I suppose a warning to those people that think this anti-strike legislation might be helpful is look at what happened to policing over the last 12 years. We are about 25 to 30% behind in our real terms of pay where we need to be. That's because we can't strike. We lost that ability in 1919 on the back of promises by government to recognise the unique responsibilities and the restrictions on our private lives that we hold, and they're just not there. And my fear is if this legislation goes through, it will impact negatively on every other public sector worker who will have minimum levels set for them. It's going to be dangerous, and it's a stark warning that this cannot happen. You know, my colleagues, some of them are asking now for the right to strike. We can't have it. We've been told via previous Home Secretaries, the European courts have said it's not for them to interfere in the right of the government to protect and provide security. The chances of us getting that right to strike or take any industrial action are so remote, it cannot be undermined for everybody else.
Steve, I'm looking at your figures, the research that you've done here. This is absolutely scary. Just in England and Wales, last year, over 8,117 officers left the service for the reasons that you're talking about. But that is the highest number of leavers since records began on all of this sort of thing. That's a heck of a lot of people.
Yeah, it's worrying. We've noticed now that on a very annually we lose about 6,000 officers per year anyway, and that spike that we saw, that 8,000, that's a really worrying trend as to what's making people leave the service. It's because of the pay, the conditions, the low morale, the high fatigue. If you look at my detective colleagues, the increased caseloads that they have and the burdens they have on the disclosure rules to try and get cases to court. You look at the failings in the court system and the wider criminal justice system. Cases are taking too long to come to fruition, to be heard. Victims are being let down, and that all compacts on my colleagues that get criticism, sometimes fairly, but mostly unjustly, about the work we do. We are there 24/7, 365 days a year, to do the very best job we can. We need proper pay, and when you hear the government say we're getting record investment, that could be £1 more than last year's investment to make it a record. It's not good enough. We need proper long-term funding settlement so we can invest in policing.
Well, for what it's worth, there's very little that comes out of the mouths of politicians that we actually believe, and they've no one to blame but themselves on this. But Steve, the thing is, I always look at police officers, and I look at anywhere on a Friday or Saturday night.
Dealing with the drunks, no
drunks,
thanks.
people vomiting, people with abuse, people urinating in the streets.
Knives.
Whatever, knives, all sorts of awfulness, the rubbish that the rest of us don't want to have to deal with. We hope there's going to be a police officer there to sort it out, going looking for drug traffickers and extortionists and all sorts of things. And, I wouldn't be good enough to join. I wouldn't have the fibre to do it. And I have huge respect. And I visited a police station in Slough earlier this year and the work they were doing in tracking down all sorts of perverts and child abusers and whatever it is, and nothing but respect for them, nothing but respect for them. But one thing, Steve, I'm going to say, do programmes like Happy Valley on BBC One with Sarah Lancashire, and she portrays a police sergeant, and I think in a very gritty, real way. It's not glamorised in any way. I don't know if you're aware of the programme or people talk about it, but is that the sort of thing that keeps people's faith in what a police force should be and what the officers should be like?
It's hard to say because I saw the first series and I'm afraid I haven't caught up with the current one, although it's on my list of things to watch when I get the time.
It is brilliant.
I think it is. If you take away the dramatic licence they have for things that we don't do in policing, I think it does give it quite an accurate portrayal sometimes, certainly of the pressures that put upon police officers who are mums, dads, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, partners. We are human beings, and when we get exposed to the lifetime over a long career of the trauma that we suffer, it has a huge impact on you personally, also your family. We've obviously seen the increase in assaults on my members go up massively over the last 2 to 3 years. And that's also being felt now on the mental health impact of my colleagues, that PTSD is on the increase for them because that constant exposure to trauma and other people's grief, there aren't the mechanisms in policing in itself to look after them properly. So a good drama, if it gives an accurate portrayal, it is helpful. But of course, then it has to be sensationalised to get people to watch it. So it's not always accurate, but it's not bad.
Yeah, well, look, there are bad apples within the force, whether it be just bad apples or all the way down to the likes of Wayne Couzens, of course, giving police an incredibly bad name. But it's important to point out that the average rank-and-file officer doing jobs none of us would want to do. Steve Hartson, from the national, he's the national chair, I should say, of the Police Federation. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. You wonder, kids at school now, in terms of careers, how they're being directed or advised on joining the police service. And also, have you ever, I presume you haven't, worn a police vest?
I haven't.
With handcuffs?
I've worked in a control 999 room, though.
Yeah?
For my sins.
Well, if you're on the street and you've got the gear that they wear, the vest, the torches,
heavy,
the handcuffs in it, in Northern Ireland, the guns that they have to carry as well, the belts, oh my God, the tasers, it's absolutely amazing. I went into a petrol station recently in Belfast, and I was with my son, and I pointed to the officers in front of me who were queuing up to get something, and I was pointing to the guns, and he said, "They're not real, Dad." You know, if only, you know, real guns, real jobs, real dilemmas, and they are the people representing us on the front line. Again, I think it just comes down to perception, how we treat people, how we cultivate people, how we value people. And it's not all about money. It's about getting society and being proud in our job and getting society to recognise that. But your views, very, very welcome.
Yes, and after the break, we're going to the red carpet. Ellie Phillips has all the latest from last night's Golden Globes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
As a guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Minutes past 8. A very good morning to you. Eamonn and Isabel here, bringing you the breakfast show on GB News.
What gives you the ick?
Things that make you go ick. Right, you tell me. This is stuff that could end relationships. Well,
yes.
Teeth straight away.
What, bad teeth?
Bad
teeth.
That's
so prejudiced. That's so mean.
Sorry, what? So what's
if
wrong
you've got
with
bucky teeth, you wouldn't.
Well, you can correct them. You can fix them.
You wouldn't wait to find out if someone had a good heart or an interesting life.
No, I wouldn't get past their teeth.
You're so mean.
If they were all gnarled or
well, to be fair, I don't like bad
or,
spelling in messages.
Or
if they
full of. Listen, I know a very good-looking woman, right, who's married to a man who's got soft plaque constantly around
disgusting.
his teeth. Now, how does she ever kiss him?
Well, maybe she doesn't. Maybe that's the key.
Maybe that is the key.
We'll be finding out what the country's biggest
Does he
icks
not
are.
have a toothbrush?
You've been sending them in all morning. It's been very entertaining. We'll look at that in around 15
you can't get
minutes
past
time.
Teeth. And you can pretend all you want that you're, a friend of teeth, but you're not. You look at your teeth. Look at all those. Look at Ellie's teeth there. Absolutely film star teeth.
I had horrendous braces to sort my teeth out. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But yeah, anyway. Right, we'll also be talking about New Year's resolutions. Do you want to lose weight? If so, Dr. Michael Mosley might have some weight-saving tips for you how to lose it. The revolutionary new 3-stage diet plan. So don't miss that.
Okay.
Right, OK, we are talking about the Golden Globes. It was the red carpet last night, and look, really big night because it's the first time this was being held for real, with an audience there as well. The great and the good all in attendance, and of course it is the big bellwether to the Oscars season as well. So
what are the Golden Globes for, Ellie?
The Golden Globes are for film and television, so it is both. So it can get a little bit confusing because there's a lot of categories.
Yes.
There were 27 official awards last night that we knew were coming up, and then 2 special awards. So it's a lot to get through.
So who were the big winners of the night?
Big winners in the film things were The Fabelmans and a film called The Banshees of Inisherin, which is a really difficult one to say. It's set in the 1920s in Ireland, and it stars Colin Farrell, who also won Best Actor in that category as well. And Steven Spielberg won Best Director for The Fabelmans. So they were the kind of the two that did really well. Another one that did really well is a film called Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. It's a bit of a crazy film, but it's tipped to do really well in the Oscars as well. That took home 2 awards in the acting category. So overall, quite an even spread amongst those 3 films at the top. And as we said earlier, Austin Butler, he won Best Actor for Elvis, which was amazing.
So these awards are always a good way for me to make a note of what I want to go and watch. Elvis, top of the list. I think we should go and watch it together, Eamonn, because you are the Elvis man.
If you come and watch The Plane with Jared Butler...
Well, I do quite like Jared Butler.
Apparently the plane crashes and they end up on an island and they've got to escape on the island because it's controlled by drug barons and things.
Sounds stressful. What about TV shows, Ellie?
TV shows, OK, so big one at the moment, everyone's loving The White Lotus. That won 2 awards.
Decent?
It's really good. And actually the second season, I think, is better than the first.
What's that all about?
White Lotus is, it follows... they're all kind of secondary characters. There's no main character. Jennifer Coolidge, who won Best Supporting Actress, she plays an heiress who goes on a trip, goes away on holiday, and it's all the characters who are in that resort at the same time. It's all their stories, their odd stories. It's very quirky. It's a bit bizarre, but it just works. You just get drawn into the characters as you go. Yeah. It's a hard one to explain, but it is really good.
Okay.
Second season's just happened, and she finally won the award because she was nominated last year, didn't win it, won it this year, and it was really nice. She made the creator, Mike White, cry with her speech because she really appreciated it because she said, I've been in this industry a long time and it's people who keep giving me chances, these little bits of jobs here and there that have kept me going, and now I've got this big break again at the end, and it's only because of those people who gave me those little chances along the way that I'm even still here.
Oh, that's really nice.
Really, really nice. Yeah, really like that.
Can we talk about Eddie Murphy? Himself, no stranger to controversy, but he's been poking fun at Will Smith and the slapgate at the Oscars last year. Do you remember that? It was a mad night, wasn't it?
Well, we'll not forget that. No.
Yeah, so that was in March last year, and obviously Will Smith smacked Chris Rock when
See, I
he made
think
a
this
joke.
is what happened when William smacked Harry.
Yeah.
And he's exactly the same.
Yes.
And that's what it,
They were
except it was
basically
no
acting
dog bowl.
They were acting it out for us at the Oscars, is what you were saying.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that happened at the Oscars after he made an offensive joke about Will Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith. And then last night, Eddie Murphy received the award, the Cecil B. DeMille Award, which is for his lifelong contribution to the arts. And accepting the award at the very, very end, he was very nice, he was very calm, he was very plain. People were like, why isn't this funny? And then at the end, he said, there's some advice I've got to give you, and there's a definitive blueprint for how you can achieve prosperity and be happy. And then I think we've got a clip of what he says after that.
Do these 3 things. Pay your taxes, mind your business, and keep Will Smith's wife's name.
It went down a storm.
Was Will Smith there?
No, he wasn't there.
I hope his
No.
post it was just so risky doing that.
No, it was brilliant. It went down a storm. Everyone loved it. 'Cause it was like, why is he being boring? He's a comedian. Then he came out with that and we were like, yes, thank you.
OK, now, you are a fashionista. I'm looking at your incredible purple boots under the table there. You're going to show them? There we go.
Oh, my God, this is the highest I've ever got me leg in my life.
You got an eyeful there. Eamonn doesn't know where to look. Goodness me.
Oh, I did.
Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, back to the red carpet. Can you whiz us through the best and the worst and what they were wearing? You've done a little run-through for us.
Yes,
Let's have
so
a look.
you have to let me know what you think of these. OK, so first up on the red carpet, one of my absolute favourites is Daisy Edgar Jones. She was up for Best Supporting Actress on the night. I'm not sure what the designer is on this one.
She's
but
from
it's
Normal
absolutely
People.
wrong.
People
She's from
recognise
Normal
her.
People, yeah. She was actually up for something called Under the Banner of Heaven, but she lost to Jennifer Coolidge in White Lotus. She looks phenomenal in this dress, I think.
Yep.
Next up, we've got Lily James.
Now, hello to you. That's incredible.
This is Atelier Versace, and she just looks unreal. So she didn't win what she was up for, Pan and Tommy, but she won that red carpet.
That dress, I love it.
Absolutely
That
flawless.
pose. Now, who's that?
Margot Robbie.
Oh.
Now, she is in a pink Chanel
Don't like
gown.
that.
Oh, I love it.
You don't
I
like
just
that?
think
No.
she looks like a mermaid angel.
What's there not to like about Margot
There's not
Robbie?
enough support on the old boobage.
Here we've got Michelle Williams. Now, she's
Love
a
that.
I love it as well.
Absolutely
I
love
hate
that.
it.
No, I love it.
I made the producers put it in because I was
Do you know
like,
what they've just said in my ear? I've got to describe this for radio. Come on, then.
Oh, it's fluffy and ruffly.
Yes.
Yes, and pink. Here we've got Eddie Redmayne in Valentino. Very simple suit, but then he's got this huge black
Charlie, our
corsage.
producer, gives this a double thumbs down. Doesn't like the corsage.
And now
at
we've
all.
got Claire Danes.
Love her.
She's in Gambasta Valley. Did I say that?
Right, how would you describe that? Oh,
This is
a
pink
challenge.
with a big bow at the front. So
Pink
it's
with a big
white
bow.
fitted
Oh.
floor length with a bow at the front. This is Heidi Klum, and she's in a brand called Germania.
revolting.
It is fluffy, it is feathery, it is sequin, it is very short. It's
She
very
looks
Heidi
stunning,
Klum.
but it's
She
not
looks
for me.
amazing.
It's the feather boa thing just makes it look tacky, but she's got such a cracking figure that she
could
can
put
wear
a big bag
anything.
on, and you'd be like, OK, I get it. It's Heidi
Yeah.
Klum in a paper bag. She looks amazing. She wasn't up for
What
any
did you
awards.
think?
I just women's fixation with who wore what. I mean, men couldn't care less.
No, you say that, Eamonn. I've never known a man quite like you.
Yes, but I don't care about red carpets.
You'll always have an opinion on an outfit.
I do.
And it's usually spot on. Hence why I ask your opinion on these ladies.
That's nice.
No,
Our little
really, he's got really good
secret
eye.
stylish fashion.
I don't think
Yeah.
Margot Robbie could wear anything bad because she'd make anything look good. So I disagree with
All
you.
right,
on
okay,
that
I'm wrong
one.
there, probably.
And the one that you both liked, which was
Lily
like a
James.
big bit of
Red
meringue.
one.
No, the white thing that was all like a meringue thing.
Oh, I love that.
Michelle Williams.
I thought that was
loved
awesome.
it. Very high fashion.
Oh, I was
Love all
enjoying
that.
that.
I would wear that.
Right, well,
With my
Ellie,
boots.
it's been too long since we've had you in the studio. That's going to have to make our little highlights reel, getting you to flash your boots and Eamonn getting an eyeball.
You said, show us again.
Honestly,
I'm going to cover his eyes up. Get the wide shot. Don't look. Where's the wide? Get the wide shot.
There you are.
Seb, there it is.
I can't hold it for that long. I'm not that flexible.
Oh, dear me. Right.
Thank you, Ellie
Need
Phillips.
to lie down.
Thank you. That was what happened at the Golden Globes last night. The papers with David Miller and Scarlett Maguire right after this.
That was really good.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own news from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents. Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here we go. Right, gosh, goodness me, it is the end of the advert break. We're all in deep discussion here, multiple conversations going on. But we're going to take you through the papers. We're joined one last time this morning by former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor, and former Labour advisor, Scarlett Maguire. Welcome back to both of you. I'm trying to find a papers list. Here it is. Right, Scarlett, we're starting with you. And declaring interests even in crisis, National Audit Office is saying.
So what this is about is saying, and it's obviously all about the PPE and the pandemic, is that even if there's a crisis, if you have a conflict of interest, if you are in the Lords or if you're an MP, and you know the person who you've put forward to apply, you've got to say. Well, you've got to say. And we know that there was a VIP fast track, and which included, you know, the man who runs Matt Hancock's pub, and more importantly, probably, who is being investigated at the moment, Baroness Bra, Michelle Malone. And actually, what the National Audit, what they're saying is, yes, there's a crisis, but actually we've still got to have transparency.
You're sounding terribly moderate on this. Why? This is look. Can I tell you something? This is something to be incredibly immoderate about. When it was always the rule that ministers, MPs, people in politics never did anything to advance the cause of people who hoped to get government contracts. And indeed, when a chap, a distinguished fellow from America, rang me up and said, could I help them? This was at the beginning of this. I said, the last thing you want is any help from me, because anyone who's been involved in the political process is going to be pushed to one side. Then I discover there's a quick, fast route for these people, and it brings out all the bottom feeders like Lady Moan and people like that. And I think to myself, what is going on here? And do you know what? We're not going to get to the bottom of this. Why aren't we going to get to the bottom of this? Because a lot of people in government do not have any interest in exposing this.
I completely agree. We're talking about 300 billion.
You should be saying all of this. You're supposed to be the radical.
I began, David. I was trying to explain the story so that people understood it. I mean, it is incredibly important because we're talking about billions of pounds. I mean, we're talking about PPE that was paid for and was completely useless. I mean, that was the worst is that we were hiring people who didn't have a clue, who knew as much about manufacturing PPE as I do. Yeah. I mean, it's just appalling.
And how did that happen?
And we're not even investigating it properly. I mean, Lord Agnew, a Tory peer, resigned over the fact that we're not actually looking at what... And we're talking billions here. And in the meantime, we have a black hole in government.
OK. Explain the defence deal between Britain and Japan, David. This is in the Mail, page 4.
That's right. This is part of Japan coming back into what I would call the normal world, where a country of Japan's economic weight would be expected to shoulder various defence burdens, but because of the history and because of Japan's role during the Second World War, they haven't done so. But increasingly, they are going to do so. And what this reflects is all of China's neighbours, including notably Japan, are extremely concerned about what China is up to. I haven't got time to go into it all, but it's a business about taking various islands in the South China Sea and effectively annexing them. And so this is a defence deal between the UK and Japan, and it's a significant development in the rest of Southeast Asia, trying to work together to make life difficult for the Chinese to be as warlike as they are.
And it's not just about Britain, actually. It's because Japan is the next chair of the G7.
Yes.
They're going around all the G7. So we're talking about other European countries and the US and Canada. So what Japan is trying to make sure is there's a phalanx of countries who are not going to let China overrun them.
And all this does is prove to us that the world is a very uncertain place. You know, all those many years ago that I was the Foreign Office Minister responsible for the relations with the Soviet Union, it was easy peasy. A lot of elderly geriatrics who didn't really pose a threat to anyone beyond their carer. This is a much more unstable and difficult world.
Phalanx. I like that.
What is a
phalanx is a group. Yes.
Does it start with F or is it a PH?
PH. PH.
The only thing, David, I think about all this is we'll have to stop showing Bridge over the River Kwai then at Easter and things like that. They can't keep showing Japanese prisoner of war films, whatever. That's not.
Well, we managed to do it with poor old Germany. I mean, how many Nazi films do we pull out?
Yeah, but they call them Nazis, not Germans.
Yes.
Germans get away with it because they're Nazis.
Well, it's not I have to say, it's not what the Germans living here feel. They wish that the Second World War would be slightly more forgotten by the Brits.
Well, Eagle's Dare is a great film.
No, there's a lot of great war films.
The
really.
Eagle Has Landed. That's another.
It's the Eagle Has
Yes.
Where pigeons can't be bothered, which I think should be
good stuff there.
The follow-up.
Scarlett, we're going to go to The Guardian now, and this is in America, and this is another school shooting.
I know.
Tell us more.
So this happened a few days ago, that a 6-year-old shot his primary school teacher, and she...
A 6-year-old?
A 6-year-old shot his primary...
Accidentally?
No, on purpose. On purpose. She saw the gun, she asked for the gun, and he shot her.
It wasn't fatal, but that...
It wasn't fatal, but she was in critical condition. I mean, so she put up her hand, and it went through her hand into her chest.
So he saw the gun, asked for the gun. Who had the gun?
The mother.
Well, just wait. The 6-year-old got the gun
from his
mother, and in Virginia, it's not against the law not to lock up your gun. So there you have, in a house with a 6-year-old, a gun, a loaded gun, lying around, and you just think these. I mean, you know. I happen to be anti-gun, but actually the laws in America are just mad. They don't protect anybody. I mean, over and over again, you have these accidental shootings, and you do have quite a few children getting guns and shooting people.
I mean, I'm a very good shot. I'm very good with a gun, and any time I ever attempted to buy a gun or have a gun in my home, family just absolutely clamped down. I thought I could trust myself. You do have a locker and whatever it is, but no one else seemed to want to trust me.
I'm with your family on this one.
I grew up around guns, and we used to do rifle practice in the garden. My dad would shoot regularly, and yet I would never, genuinely, never move to the States because of the situation at the moment and having children of school age, and the thought of children having to do regular shooter drills and all the rest of it is just abhorrent.
Let's talk cricket. In the Express. So protests, tell us more.
Well, this is an interesting story because it's rather typical of a lot of what's going on in British villages. In this particular village, they've been playing cricket on the green for over 100 years, but now a lot of newcomers have come in and they are objecting to the fact that these balls sometimes end up in their gardens, and effectively they're going to stop playing of cricket on this village
Well, that's
green.
just not cricket.
It isn't cricket. But, you know, what I think is extraordinary is that we don't have rules where people are... If you choose to move into a village and there's a cricket pitch in the middle, you cannot be heard to say they cannot play cricket. I mean, this does come up quite a lot. We in London live next door to a lock, and the lock often opens at 4:30 or 5 o'clock. But I've always made the rule, and I've lived there for nearly 30 years now, if I chose to move into next door to a lock, so the lock comes into St Catherine's Dock off the Thames, a very picturesque part of London, I'm not going to be saying, no, you can't bring your boat in at 5 o'clock, you've got to wait till 5 p.m. And I just think that the fact that the authorities are prepared to tolerate these kind of objections when they're just exploitative of a situation where people should not be able to protest against something. They willingly moved in next.
Because what happened was that they were demanding that the cricket club paid for sort of massive netting and things, and the cricket club just couldn't.
Well, their village
couldn't
club,
afford it. And actually, I mean, as you say, these balls have been falling into these gardens for over 100 years. And it is like people moving into the country and complaining about cocks crowing or church bells, actually.
Yes.
And it's just
West
life.
London and complaining about airplanes landing in Heathrow. I mean, we have to suffer that permanently. Nothing we can do about that.
And indeed, you know, when I gave evidence for Chelsea about the expansion of Stamford Bridge, there were people saying it's outrageous. And I said, this football ground has been there since the beginning of the 20th century. When did you move in? 2 years ago.
Guys, thank you very
Always
much
a pleasure.
indeed. Thank you. Please stay with us actually for this next conversation, because this is something called icks, and icks are things that turn you off, really, that that you just don't like seeing or whatever. So, particularly when it comes to dating, those of you in the market for a partner, have you ever broken up with someone because of an ick?
Yeah, they're often very minor things. And in fact, we've got loads of you sending in your icks this morning. Jackie says the word ick is in fact my ick. Fen says people that mispronounce words. Fajita, where they pronounce the J instead of fajita. Same with jalapeno, my biggest ick. I've ended many relationships and friendships because of it.
What? Because somebody says jalapeno?
Yeah. I'm with you. It's awful.
I think you're well out of that relationship.
Diana says poor eating habits and dental hygiene. You can't bear that. No. Awful teeth and tattoos.
Teeth again,
says
you see.
Tony.
Well, these tattoos is very controversial, people...
Some people love a tattoo.
Where's your tattoo, then?
I don't think I could stick the pain, David. I think that's the thing.
I just couldn't stick waking up in the morning and seeing
Same thing every day.
Well, footballers now are absolutely covered.
But they've got nothing better to do than play badly for 90 minutes and then earn a lot of money for doing nothing for the rest of the week.
Spitting. So sometimes you have to spit, sometimes you don't. But spitting, yes, particularly if you spit and you go.
Oh God!
You know what I mean?
Horrible.
You know what I mean?
It's just horrible.
It's not just.
Right.
It's just not like a. It's a.
What do we do then? Are we throwing away beautiful relationships because of a bit of a... let's speak to dating coach Hayley Quinn about all of this. Are we all being a bit too fussy?
Well, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I'm definitely not a fan of persuading yourself to date someone when your self-esteem is saying no, or I don't like how they breathe, or please don't wear those boxers. So I think it's a balance of trying not to be too picky and also noticing, do all your relationships end this way? Is it just once off that you found the ick, or are you bailing out early on lots of potential romances because you keep finding something intolerable?
Some people are more icky than others.
Oh, my wife, Hayley, let me tell you about my wife, right? So apparently when she met me, and I was the greatest thing since sliced bread, she pretended to like football and whatever it is. Then it all started. My Crocs, for instance. You know, that's not acceptable. My Crocs.
What are Crocs?
Crocs. Do you not wear Crocs? Most comfortable things.
Fashion faux pas. I'm with Ruthie. I see no wrongs there. I'm on Team Ruthie.
Yeah, the fact that I get this every Sunday morning. Are you going to sit there all day? I get that. What's that, right?
And are you?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I've got a whole series of programmes to watch, so I'm going to sit there all day.
Watch TV
You start off with the politics programmes, and then there's the farming programmes, and then there's the football come lunchtime or whatever it is. That's practically all day.
Okay.
Yes.
Then the eagle has landed.
I think it's a little bit different, though, isn't it? Because that's a long-term relationship. So she's already sealed the deal and committed to you. And I think when we talk about icks, it's usually something that happens quite early on that causes maybe you're sat there on date 2 and you discover something that you can't get past about someone that means you have to get out of that dating situation.
Do you think some people miss out on potential soulmates because they are being a bit shallow about things sometimes?
Says the most shallow woman in the world.
I'm asking the question, it's not an opinion.
If we just look at how the world of dating is set up, where perhaps the first thing we assess about someone is we look at their height or their job. You know, maybe that's part of what makes us focusing on these small details rather than looking at a person more holistically in terms of how they treat us.
Got to look at people in the whole.
I want to know who you have given up in the past, who you now think you feel bad about.
Oh, no.
And why it was.
No, come on.
I thought it's called Hayley being discerning, really, at the end of the day. And these are things, I mean, we are chemically attracted to people, so whatever their chemical scent is, or whatever, that can attract us to people. So likewise, if it's repulsive, you know, and certain things about them are personally repulsive, I think that's legitimate.
I think it's legit most of the time. And it's a really good question for singles to ask themselves is, does continuing to go out with this person support my self-esteem? And if you are dragging yourself onto a date with someone who you just looked at their fingernails and you think this is a no from me, that's probably not going to be the right decision. However, as I said, if you find that you are ruling out everyone because there's always something that isn't quite perfect, you might be seeking perfection when really the core of a great relationship is a degree also of acceptance and compromise.
You see, it's not a good sign if in the pre-honeymoon period you're already finding fault. You know, that, as you say, it kicks in when you're in a long-term relationship and everything they do irritates you.
Is it not worse if you don't find fault? Like, for instance, I am blessed from the point that...
You fall in love easily.
I do fall in love easily, but I don't have body odour, right? So I'm like Prince Andrew. I don't sweat, right?
And we're allowed to have a sniff to check this one out.
You know what I do not have? You
That's an ick for me.
I could wear my socks for a month because I don't have smelly feet. I just don't have it, right?
Do you not?
So why then?
Sound like Prince Andrew on a bad day.
Why would people then get into a relationship with someone who have stinking feet? And I know people who have stinking feet, right? Absolutely horrendous. And I think, why are you two in a relationship? Because I couldn't, whether it's male or female, Hayley, be in the same room with someone who excels. Oh, smell my feet, or my feet great, or my feet, you know.
I get smelly feet.
Well, you don't have to tell me, you know.
This is real confessional time.
Just telling you, said you couldn't get into a room you've never noticed all these years.
So Hayley, yes. So people do put up with a lot. There's some people that get over the ick, don't they?
Some people, well, I don't think it's not about putting up with stuff exactly. When you're thinking about an ick, it's, smelly feet, that sounds quite logical, doesn't it? Because that could be related to hygiene. An ick really could be something that other people would find completely okay. Usually icks are quite weird and strange things. As I said, I remember this when I was 17 and very much prone to getting icks. I really didn't like the way that somebody breathed on a date. That was it for me. I felt that he wasn't taking nice deep breaths, and because of that I was immediately put off. So I'm not saying it's not about disregarding hygiene. An ick really is about focusing on quite a minor detail about what something does that other people would accept.
Something irrational, I guess. Hayley Quinn, really amusing talking to you, dating coach, joining us this morning for her take on how to.
Yeah, because we're talking about a poll that says half of you have ended a relationship because of an ick. There we go.
Right, we're going to take a break. More after this.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
The government vows to protect lives with a bill to curb strikes as ambulance workers walk out today.
Hello there, very good to see you just after 9 o'clock on this Wednesday, the 11th of January. You tuned into Breakfast in GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Unions have attacked a new bill aimed at curbing the impact of strike action, calling it undemocratic. Introducing the legislation, the Business Secretary said he was duty-bound to protect the lives of the British people.
It comes as 25,000 ambulance workers and call handlers have walked out across England and Wales today. The Health Secretary told us on the programme today that both the government and the unions want a better health service.
There's things we can do better in terms of getting the system to work. That's what the unions themselves said they wanted to see on Monday. There's opportunities for us to get those sort of systems in place.
The Foreign Secretary will meet with Northern Ireland's party leaders today to discuss the impact of the protocol. It follows a breakthrough in negotiations between Britain and the EU that will give Brussels access to UK trade data.
In entertainment, Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans and the Banshees of Inisherin won big at the Golden Globes, which were held last night. The awards ceremony also saw Austin Butler win Best Actor for his portrayal of Elvis Presley.
Keep your thoughts coming in. Lots of you have been in touch this morning. gbviews@gbnews.uk. And don't forget, do let us know where you're watching or listening from.
Did I ever tell you about appearing on Stars in Their Eyes as Johnny Cash?
No, but I heard your rendition of Johnny Cash this week and it was incredible. I thought you were brilliant at Elvis.
It was so good. It was
Go on,
so good.
go on,
It's
do
on,
it.
it's on YouTube.
I know you're itching to
it's
do
on
it.
YouTube if you
Come
want
on.
to check it. No, the point of my story is this. It was so good, says you,
Ring of Fire,
that everybody thought I was Elvis. The trouble is I finished and people said to me, you were brilliant as Elvis. I wasn't Elvis, I was Johnny Cash.
For goodness sake.
That was the
Do
thing.
people not know?
That was the thing. It's there on YouTube, check it out.
No, I want it now.
OK, so to our top story. The Business Secretary set out new laws requiring a minimum level of service for the public sector during strikes.
Yes, and the unions have already threatened legal action against the government if the bill's passed, describing the legislation as undemocratic.
So the Health Secretary appeared on this very programme this morning telling us the government is working with the trade unions.
Open to discussing in terms of this year's pay review body that will want to take on board what has happened with inflation. We're keen to work with the trade unions in terms of our evidence to the pay review body. That's what we had constructive discussions with them on Monday about. It's what I'm meeting the Doctors' Union to discuss further today. So it's important in terms of this coming year's pay review body that we get that right, that we work constructively together on the evidence that goes in, and of course that will take on board what has happened over the last year.
Steve Barclay a little bit earlier. Let's cross to Westminster. Our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, standing by for us. Good morning again to you, Darren. Look, there's quite a lot of backlash in Parliament, it has to be said, to this legislation being proposed by the Business Secretary.
Yeah, indeed, many people feel it will curb people's ability to strike, but also, frankly, many within particularly the health sector feel that there is already not a minimum level of service across the board, that frankly at the moment, even without the strikes, the health service in particular is in such a bad state that people are having to wait for quite a long period of time. I mean, it is possible, looking at the figures, to suggest that hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people have gone to A&E, Isabel, at the end of last year and had to wait more than 4 hours. Look at the reports today that the health service is in such a crisis. Again, suggestions that we've seen the highest level of excess deaths outside of the pandemic since 1951, that 1,000 people are dying every single week, in excess to normally what we would see. Now, in part, it seems because of the disruption and frankly, the strain that currently the National Health Service is suffering. Now, from the government's point of view, they argue that is why there needs to be this minimum level, that it is something that is replicated in other major European countries like France and Germany, for example. But you're right, there will be strong opposition from not just the Labour Party, but indeed from members of the House of Lords before this legislation gets through. Even then, it will almost certainly face legal challenges, and that is why it is not fundamentally going to sort out any of the strike actions in the days and months to come. They carry on today with ambulance workers, but it could get a hell of a lot worse in the weeks to come. Strike action potentially by junior doctors too, teachers. Though there is some hope, at least in the Department of Transport today, as talks continue with the RMT union about rail strikes, suggestions the government may well offer or up their pay offer when it comes to all of this. This is all going to dominate, I reckon, Prime Minister's Question Time a little later on today, the first one of the year between Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak. The government, of course, would like to argue Labour find this all tricky too. Who are they on? Are they the side of the unions? Hard-working people? That is the argument the government wants to make. But in the end, the reason politically this is very, very difficult stuff for the government is frankly because we could see further coordinated action in reaction to this legislation. And additionally, it seems that public opinion's not really budging on these strikes, particularly in the backing for nurses, and there is no end in sight. The disruption just looks like it's going to pave its way through the start of this year.
OK, Darren McCaffrey with that. Thank you very much indeed.
Now, all of this comes as thousands of ambulance staff have walked out in an ongoing dispute over pay. Our West Midlands reporter Will Horrells with this story.
It's a sound that will comfort some and concern others. But today, no matter the feeling, fewer sirens will be heard on the road. For the second time in less than a month, thousands of ambulance workers in Wales and England are on strike. Despite crisis talks between the Department for Health and union leaders at Unison and GMB on Monday, the walkout couldn't be stopped. Only the most serious of emergencies, including cardiac arrests, will be responded to today. Individual ambulance trusts have agreed a basic level of service with unions. But the government has criticised leaders for not setting a national standard. Now new legislation has been introduced in Parliament by the Business Secretary aimed at securing a minimum level of safety.
A lack of timely cooperation from the ambulance unions meant employers could not reach agreement nationally for minimum safety levels during recent strikes, and health officials were left guessing at the likely minimum coverage, making contingency planning almost impossible and putting everyone's constituents' lives at risk.
In a response, Unison's General Secretary Christina McAneer said, "Ministers should be putting all of their energies into solving the NHS dispute, not worsening relations with health workers. Unions want to work with the government to secure a pay deal, but attacking workers makes that much harder. Despite the industrial action, health bosses are encouraging you to call 999 for serious emergencies."
If you have a life-threatening illness, you must ring 999. Your call will be answered by an experienced call handler. They will assess you, and if you need an emergency ambulance, you will receive an emergency ambulance.
With little hope of a deal to end the action now, more ambulance strikes are planned for within the fortnight. Will Hollis for GB News.
Well, look, lots of you have been getting in touch this morning on this very topic. It is one of those ones that really gets people going. Debbie really opposed to this strike. She says stop giving pay rises. She thinks they're inflationary. Every time you give a nurse, a doctor, a postman, a trained crew a pay rise, it pushes up shop prices to cover their pay rises. The rest of us ordinary workers and members of the public cannot afford things we need, let alone gas and electric. So say no to pay rises.
I think it's a pretty stupid argument.
Well, inflation is what they say affects everybody in a negative way. It's a really interesting argument.
But I think the argument of whether ambulance drivers and operatives should go on strike, I mean, it is a difficult one. The system's broken already. Yes. I don't see how it can be any worse, or would it be any worse today? But it is an incredible dilemma as to how they then draw attention to what they're being paid, or indeed how their system is being funded and supported. Let's go to the Shadow Education Secretary. We've got Bridget Phillipson here from the Labour Party to talk to us here this morning. Ms Phillipson, good morning to you. Today you've got... I
was going to say, in front of the Daily Mail this morning, Labour opposes these life-saving laws to curb strikes. Why is it that you are going against this legislation, which is supposed to help ordinary people go about their business and stop threats to life from things like nurse strikes and ambulance strikes?
Because the way to stop strikes happening is for ministers to take their responsibility seriously rather than bringing in new legislation. They should be sitting down with the trade unions trying to sort this out and to try and get an agreement. That's the approach that we would be taking. I think this legislation the government are talking about is unworkable, and I think it's a complete distraction from what needs to happen, which is proper discussions to try and divert further strike action in the future. Unions have been clear about what they want to discuss with ministers. It's just ministers are refusing to do so.
Well, it's clearly not unworkable. It works in Germany, it works in France, it works in Spain. Goodness me, if there's any country that you associate with strikes, it's France, isn't it?
It's not working especially well in France, where they've seen strikes increase since they brought in this legislation. And it's not working especially well in Spain either, where it's being challenged in the courts. So ministers have known for a very long time that industrial action was potentially going to happen across a number of different areas of the public sector, and they haven't done anything to properly avert that kind of action taking place. And I think the fact we've had chaos at the heart of government for almost a year has meant that there hasn't been proper discussion with trade unions about how to sort this out. The same is true in education, where we've had 5 education secretaries in 1 year. Little wonder that no progress has been made on this.
Yeah. Shadow Secretary, education is what it's about for you. And today in the House, you're trying to get a vote, you're trying to get a binding vote in the Commons on ending tax breaks for private schools. Why is that? Why do you have a bee in your bonnet about that one?
I think parents can make choices about where they send their children to school, and that includes private schools. I just happen to think that private schools shouldn't enjoy tax benefits. I don't think it can be justified. I think it's an easy and straightforward way that we could raise £1.7 billion and invest that money in delivering a brilliant state education for every child, driving up standards in our state schools and making sure we've got more teachers in our classrooms. That's where we'd use the money, to make sure we've got more teachers, we've got better mental health support for our children, and we're providing better help and support for new head teachers who are coming in. You know, we know that teachers are leaving the profession in their droves because of the workload that they're facing and the pressure they're under. And as Education Secretary, I want to make sure that changes, and I want to deliver high standards for every child in our country.
Isn't this really, though, just the politics of envy? Because the truth is, the parents who work incredibly hard and make huge sacrifices to send their children very often to private school are actually paying twice. They're paying their taxes as well, which funds the state system, and then they're paying for their children to get privately educated. You take away that tax break, many of these less expensive private schools will be forced to close. This is based not on my opinion, but on the statistics that have been done, which has found that this would put more stress on public services. A further 130,000 children would be forced into the state system, costing taxpayers £400 million a year, because the state would have to educate displaced pupils.
Well, the figures that you're citing come from the independent schools lobby, so it's little wonder that they don't like our plans in this area. But I know that parents want the best for their children, and if they choose to send their children to private school, I'm not going to criticise individual parents for doing that. I just don't think it's right that private schools enjoy business rates relief, and I don't think it can be justified that the VAT reliefs that they enjoy and the tax breaks that they see. And this, for me, is about making sure that we are raising money to invest in our state schools.
Yeah, it just really sounds like class warfare. It really does. A lot of people will say they're given charitable status because at the end of the day, not only are private schools really good at reaching out to the state schools in their area and allowing them to share their resources, but as we've said time and again, it takes that pressure off the state. And let's not deny the incredible contribution that private schools make to our sporting world, our Olympic athletes, our international sports teams. Would this not just have the effect of dumbing down rather than driving up standards?
No, we drive up standards in our state schools, which is where the vast majority of children go after all. It's 93% of children in our country who go to state schools. So the vast majority of your viewers will be sending their children to state schools. That's the true right across the country. And I want to make sure that in those state schools we're driving up standards, and we do that. The evidence doesn't support that. If you look at the work from, say, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, they've been clear that even where we've seen big increases in fees at private schools, and we have seen considerable increases over the last decade in the fees that private schools charge, we haven't seen more children moving into the state sector. In fact, the numbers of children at private schools has remained broadly static. So I don't support the bogus numbers that the private schools lobby bandy about, and I think it's a shame that Conservative MPs continue to parrot them rather than standing up for the vast majority of children and families who use the state sector. I have no problem with parents who choose to send their children to private school. They want the best for their children. I want the best for all children right across our country, and that's my priority.
Anything to say about what's going on in Scotland and the strikes there with teachers yesterday and today?
Well, no one wants to see strikes going ahead, and I certainly don't want to see disruption in our schools, and it's regrettable that that's the situation that we see in Scotland, and I don't want to see that here in England too, and that's why it's, I think, vital that the Education Secretary here in England seeks to resolve this. You know, there were further talks that took place on Monday. It's not clear that any progress has been made there. Ministers have been refusing for months to talk about pay, and that's got to change.
Okay.
I'd just love to finish with your own private take on your own education, Bridget. You grew up in the northeast, up around the Sunderland area, as I understand it. You went to state schools, and you ended up, goodness me, you went to Oxford. Do you ever look back and think that was against the odds, or how did that happen, or what do you thank? Who do you thank for that?
I know how fortunate I've been. I had an amazing education at brilliant state schools in Sunderland, and I've got my teachers to thank because they had, high hopes for us. They were really aspirational for us, and they pushed us to do our best. So I want to make sure that, I can take that experience and deliver a brilliant state education for every child in our country. We've got so many brilliant and talented children and young people right across our country that are held back by their circumstances.
Yeah, well, look, no one can disagree with trying to improve standards across the board. Bridget Phillipson, Shadow Secretary of State for Education, really interesting to get your take this morning, and that will be appearing before Parliament today, a little bit later on. Thank you.
Thanks for your time today, and could I just say, and I would say this to a man as well, is Bridget still there?
Great jacket.
The coat.
I loved it. I thought the same.
Brilliant. I was thinking exactly.
See?
Sorry, has Bridget gone? Bridget, I'm serious.
Great jacket.
I don't wish you to think I'm being sort of sexist here or anything. If it was a man standing there in a great coat, I would have said exactly the same. I just think really suits you, sir. Absolutely lovely.
I thought the same Darren McCaffrey, actually.
Thank you very much.
Right, we'll leave it there. We've got to go. We're going to take a
all.
break. Dr.
Gold
Michael
star.
Mosley after this. See you in a sec.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
We've got a few minutes to spare with Dr. Michael Mosley now, the guru about losing weight and if it's possible to reverse diabetes, because he's there. You were a sufferer of diabetes. Do you still suffer from diabetes? Can you get rid of it? Can you reverse it? Michael, very good to see you again.
Lovely to see you. Yep, 10 years ago I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and I went off and invented a diet, as you do, the 5-2 diet, and introduced intermittent fasting to the world. And I lost about 10 kilos over 8 weeks and reversed my diabetes, and I've kept the weight off and the blood sugars have stayed down. So I'm delighted by that. And that's kind of why I bang on about weight loss quite a bit, because I like to get the message out to other people as well.
You do it so well. There's a big word over your shoulder there, and that is keto. There behind you. What is keto? Because one of the things you want to talk about is a keto Mediterranean diet. What is that?
Sure. So a keto diet is one where you're cutting down the carbs for a while at least. And when that happens, your body starts burning your body fat rather than your blood sugars. And you go into what's called a state of ketosis, because what actually happens is the fat which is stored around your gut gets converted into these things called ketone bodies, which your body uses as fuel instead of glucose. So when you switch into ketosis, then you turn into a sort of fat burning machine. And also when you start producing these ketone bodies, they suppress your hunger hormones, in particular one called ghrelin. So surprisingly enough, after a remarkably short period of time, you stop feeling hungry. And that's kind of one of the advantages of keto diet. The version that I'm talking about, and my wife has written, who's a GP, recently read a book called The Fast 800 Keto, is a low-carb, low-calorie, Mediterranean-style one. So you eat lots of kind of healthy foods, oily fish, nuts, plenty of greens, and you're on a relatively low-calorie diet as well. So you're getting all the nutrients, but you're not starving yourself to death or anything.
Right, and as you say, look, you practice what you preach. You know, you really know your stuff, and you're kind of combining then this low-carb diet with the keto Mediterranean diet, and you have this new 3-stage plan. What do people need to do? How can they enact it? Lots of people, new year, new month, they want to try and change their lives, turn things around.
Absolutely. One of the best things you could do is to check out the fast800.com to get details about it and to see which form of the diet is suitable for you. But the first stage, which is kind of rapid weight loss, you go on a 900-calorie diet, basically eating the foods which are in the recipes or online. And you do that for a number of weeks just to get yourself going, and then you switch over to a kind of...
If I did that, Michael, I would die. 900 calories for a number of weeks, I would die.
No, you absolutely wouldn't. Give it a go. I honestly promise you, within a remarkably short period of time, you'll stop feeling hungry and you will feel really energetic. I put myself on it again because I put on a few kilos over the Christmas holidays, and I shed 3 kilos in 10 days. And the important thing is I got my blood pressure right down and my blood sugars right down. And I'm feeling terrific. And as you can see, I'm rather hyper at the moment.
Yes, full of beans. Is it coffee? I mean, are you just substituting all the calories with things that boost your energy? I don't know. But I mean, look, 900 calories, if that's all you're allowed in a day, when would you have it? What would you have?
You split it over 3 meals. So you have a breakfast. I typically have something like scrambled eggs and smoked salmon This morning I had a chorizo omelette from Claire's book. Lunchtime I will have some fish and some veg, and in the evening I'll probably have pork, chicken, maybe a bit of steak, or maybe again some fish with green veg. Wash down with lots of water. I'm afraid this is an alcohol-free diet, at least initially. So make sure you're drinking at least a large glass of water with every meal.
Fill you up,
because
water.
one of the things... Absolutely. And the important thing is that when you're on a keto diet or any rapid weight loss diet, you're going to lose a lot of water. So you see really impressive drop in weight. Some of that is going to be water, but you need to fuel yourself up. Otherwise, you will get headaches and you'll get constipated. So make sure you're drinking a large glass of water with every meal.
The thing about it is we believe every word because it works. You have a proven track record on that. You are the guru. You are the man. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Michael Mosley, and that is his latest diet and everything you need to know about eating healthily. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Give it a go.
Give it a... Oh,
All right, we're on it.
300
it's not enough.
calories. 300
But that does sound nice, smoked salmon and...
Yeah, but it's that much, much. That's it. We've got Andrew Pearce, who will be in for me tomorrow. Isabel will be back with him from 6 a.m.
Tom Harwood up next with the briefing. Bye-bye.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30